Alright, it looks like we're live. I'm gonna open up the YouTube just to see if the Hangout window is showing up. It's not showing up in OBS, but I think it might be just a thing. Well, anybody who is here, this is Spacepan. I'm here with Ashley Messenger. And we're gonna do that thing that I do every week, where I read a little bit from Women Respond to the Men's Movement, and we make fun of them. And as you can see from the screen, I already have so many things set up. I have the pages already, I have a bingo sheet already, and I have little pink hashtags. I have little pink hashtags that I can put to cover them as we go through.
Do you have a link to the bingo sheets?
I have them in my Discord. I have like the link where you can like cycle through them.
Okay.
And then I posted all the images in there too. Because I was paranoid about like the link only being temporary or something. So I wonder if it still works. I'm gonna go ahead and post it in the chat. And then I'll see if the chat shows up on the screen. I don't know if it is. For some reason the Hangouts window isn't showing up. I'm not sure why. I wonder if it's because neither of us have our camera on. Maybe that's why. So we'll see if that shows up when Glebs drops in here. If he does a little bit later. He said he would drop in, so... oh yeah, and I sent Prince of Queens the link on Discord, which means that he probably isn't going to see it. So I'm going to send him a quick message on Facebook. Man, social media makes everything so complicated. I have like 9 different messaging apps on my phone.
I barely use my phone.
I use my phone all the time, every day. I want to get one of those like smart watches. I feel like it's more dignified.
Yes.
But now I play fucking like Game Boy Advance games on my phone. So now it's a Game Boy and a phone, which is a problem. Okay, send through. So this one is called Pumping Iron John by Jane Caputi and Gordine O. Mackenzie. Gordine Mackenzie, I didn't see a whole lot when I googled her name, but Jane Caputi is actually a professor at Bowling Green. I'm not sure if she was at the time of writing this, but I'm going to assume probably yes. And Pumping Iron John refers to Iron John, which was the book famously written by Robert Bly. And that's kind of what they mean when they say the men's movement, when they're responding to it in this entire book. So we're halfway through the book, and finally we're going to have a section that promises to actually respond directly to what Robert Bly has to say. So this one will be a little bit different, which I'm kind of excited for, because so many of these other ones are very, very traditional cookie-cut feminist shit. But this one's going to be, I think, very distinctly like these 90s feminists being idiots. So it'll have its own flavor that I think is very true to the collection of things in this book.
Yeah, I haven't read Bly, personally.
Yeah, well, I haven't actually read it. I just looked up a bunch of YouTube videos, because that's how I research. I'm the monster YouTube created. But he's a poet, so I feel like that, like, the best way is actually to like watch some of his poetry. Actually, you know what? Maybe I should grab one. I'm gonna grab a video of his, and we can watch that. I think that I can technologically manage this. I should probably make its own window, and then something that's not like 90 minutes long. But you can find, like, he does like his Robert Bly, he does like Iron John lectures, and he also does like a whole reading of the tale of Iron John. Yeah, the story of Iron John by Robert. That's one I would recommend. I'll actually go ahead and post that that link. I think I can post a YouTube link into chat, right? They have weird rules. I'm never quite sure what's allowed. Okay, and hello to Terrence in the chat. Glad to see you made it. This one doesn't have... This one just has, like, his face, though. So I'm gonna find, like... Here we go. This one's interesting. Okay, so I'm gonna... Let's see. For some reason... Sorry, I'm just looking at OBS right now, and it's not showing me the same window it showed me before. So I'm not sure where all my stuff is. It has, like, memberships and donations up here. What am I doing?
Donations.
Yeah, right? Exactly. I don't need that. Editor? Here we go.
It's like...
The editor.
That's Stefan Molyneux's thing. He would say
right.
Donations.
Donations, yes, to donate. Actually, I'm glad you mentioned him. He had a very interesting tweet yesterday. One that I wanted to make a video about, but I decided to make a video about Allison Tieman's kerfuffle with Memorial Day because I felt that that was, like, timelier and it kind of was something I wanted to get out there. But what Molyneux posted about was that he had a dream where he ran for Prime Minister of Canada and that he had to explain that to his family. And he kept it very vague. He didn't say anything else besides that. Why is this a window capture?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Oh, hello, Globs. Glad you made it.
Hello.
I was just gonna throw up a video here just to get a little taste of Robert Bly because I feel like we probably should just to kind of understand the next segment here. So let me just see here. The Poetry of Kabir.
Oh. We lost the other guest.
Uh-oh.
Oh.
He's back.
Hey, yay. Also, for some reason, Hangouts doesn't show my microphone levels. So, that's why I was asking if you can hear me. Which is kind of weird, because, well, I see your mic level when you're speaking, but mine doesn't show up at all for some reason.
I wonder if it's because of the way I have it set up. Are you looking in, like, the Hangouts window?
Yeah, the Hangouts window.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Also, Ashley says, can't hear anything.
Are you muted? Oh, but you muted yourself. I didn't mute anyone.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that I wouldn't be surprised if it turned out that, Google engineers managed to screw something up royally again, because that's kind of how they operate.
See, I wonder if what Google does is, like, they have people on their naughty list, and then they just use them as guinea pigs.
Yeah.
That's what I would do. If I was, like, an evil person running Google, that's what I would do.
Well, I mean, it's not the management is evil, but just the normal, monkeys who make the stuff go, and work, sort of. They are not evil. They're just incompetent. Like, never attribute to malice what can be adequately explained by stupidity. Hanlon's razor.
Exactly. And Occam's Hanlon's razor. For some reason, this black box here is supposed to be showing a Robert Bly video, but I don't know. It's just not. I'm not sure what the deal is. It just shows my cursor, but I wonder if it has to do with, like, I don't know, codecs or something.
Well, how do you capture screen capture or something?
No, I did a window capture.
Well, I think that's you tried window capture previous time and it didn't work for you either for some reason.
I think last time I was doing a screen capture of the actual OBS window, which is like dial 11 boomer crap.
Screen capture worked for you last time, but window capture didn't work no matter what you tried. I think it's Maybe.
Oh, maybe that's it. I mean, and that's why the other thing isn't... Okay, so I'm going to remove that. Okay, so I'll just go to a screen capture of it. Wait, radio capture. Where's the display capture? I wonder if that is different. Oh, because yeah, display is the whole like display. God, display means screen. Okay, yeah, we'll just do that. We'll just do that for a moment here, while I. Oh, now I'm in Infinity. I need this one. Okay, we're not going to watch this whole thing, but I was going to show a little bit, just to get a taste of who Robert Bly is, because he's an interesting character. I think this beginning part is just quiet.
Kabir was from India, one of the ancestors of Rumi. Born in 1398.
So, I see the video,
Died in
but
1527.
I'm not sure if I don't hear any audio.
Oh, that's because my thing's in. Here.
Well, the audio is there in the YouTube video, but...
Friend, wake up.
Oh, but I don't hear it in the Hangout.
Why do you go on sleeping? The night is over. Do you want to lose a day the same way?
Oh, wait.
Other women who manage to get up early have already found an elephant
I hear
or
something.
a jewel. And so much was lost already while you slept. And that was so unnecessary. The one who loves you understood, but you did not. You forgot to make a place in your bed next to you. Instead, you spent your life playing. In your 20s, you did not grow because you did not know who your Lord was.
Hello.
Oh, hello.
Wake up.
Hi.
Wake up. There's no one in your bed. He left you during the long night. Kabir says, the only woman awake is the woman who has heard the flute.
Okay, well that's just a little taste of it. So, so that's kind of so yeah, he's he's a different guy. He's a little bit eccentric, but you kind of can't be non-eccentric as a poet, I feel like. But he's got his own shtick. He's addressing men's issues in his own way, and this is he kind of became the face of this very early men's movement. So this is the guy that all these feminists in this book got their panties in a bunch over, that are like freaking out over, like this. Like this is the big threat, right?
Yeah, this is the evil patriarch. Oh, he is white, he is old.
Yeah, and like they're angry at him for playing with Indian flutes and drums and for saying poetry, and it's like what do you want?
So basically, they're like Taliban. They want to ban all music or something.
Yeah, it's kind of there's kind of a funny irony to it, right? Because like they really hated this men's movement, right? So instead they get Paul Elam. Instead they get a much angrier, much more fiery men's movement. So that's whatever. Okay, and I guess my my capture isn't quite working for the Hangout. So I'm just gonna make the bingo sheet bigger. At least we got some stuff on the screen. Alright, I got my pages, I got my bingo sheet, and I got my little hashtags that I can use to put onto things as we find them. So much more prepared this week. We are leveling up here. And
But we're still broadcasting in standard resolution, not even HD.
oh shit, yeah, that was the one. That was like the thing that you were like, dude. I guess I can't change it like mid thing. I probably can. Video, resolution, FPS. You had explained to me last time how to update that. How to broadcast in a higher resolution.
Well, I think you should go to settings, if I remember correctly, and
There's general, stream, output. Oh,
Yeah, I think
is it
so.
the video bitrate?
no,
that's-
not the bitrate, but the resolution. No, the bitrate might leave it as is. I think.
Oh, I see. Is that where I have 1092 by 614 for the resolution? I probably want to change that, or the base canvas resolution. That's probably it. It doesn't let me do it now that I'm started though.
Yeah.
Ah, well, I'll try to remember that for next time. The other thing I should do is my pages today didn't turn out great. Some of them I think are readable and are okay, but like the second page especially is pretty rough. But I have the actual book, so I will be reading off of the actual book, so I don't have to suffer through these awful pictures I took.
You can send me the files. I can try cleaning up the photo so it's more readable.
If you want to, I think we should be okay. Let's see. There's how many pages are there? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's 12 pages. Which isn't too bad. It's really just number 2 that's kind of rough. But I posted them all on my Discord in the whatever section. This was about a couple of days ago.
Like this is whatever section. Okay, let me see. Oh yeah, the 12 pages. I think I see them. Yeah.
But I'm looking at it on the screen, and like the first page is pretty readable. For some reason, there's just the contrast is like really bad. I think that there was maybe too much light in the room that I was taking the picture in, but I have a different phone that has a much better camera, so I think I'll try to use that one next time.
Do you use Android phone? Because Android you can install different program. Like Open Camera is pretty good. You can mess with the settings as well. Because standard cameras in some phones have very few settings to adjust.
Oh yeah, I can open it in Snapchat too, and I can turn all the pages into women. Hey Ashley, if you're still there, for some reason we can't hear you at all.
Yeah, I had a problem with my audio. Like, I couldn't... I think as soon as Gleb turned up, for whatever reason, I just couldn't hear anything. And then I managed to get it working again.
Okay, yeah, good. Looks like it's working then. Alright, baller. So, I'm gonna... Let's go ahead and cruise through a bit of this. Okay,
I think...
Sorry, what?
Yeah. Princess here.
Oh.
Hello.
Hello, Prince. You made
Hi.
it just in time. We've just been kind of bullshitting around a little bit, and I got my bingo sheet ready.
Bit.
I got my bingo sheet ready. No, this week I am so ready. I am so professional. I got all the pages ready on the screen. I got little hashtags to use. I got little hashtags. You see my little pink hashtags ready to put onto the bingo sheet. Bam, bam, bam.
I will share this.
Oh, that's a good idea. That's the thing I forgot to do. I forgot to like post the link in places. I mean, pretty much the only place I post things is just like in my Discord.
Would be helpful if you knew someone with like 1 million subs, wouldn't it?
I know, right? Let's just buy subs. Let's just buy them.
I heard you could ask Jeff Holiday.
Ooh, there we go. Let's be friends with Jeff Holiday. That sounds like a good idea.
What could possibly go wrong?
Where should I go? I'll post I'll show my Discord in the chat too. just in case. But I'm pretty sure it's just about everybody on who uses Discord is already in there anyway. Okay. I could post my link on Minds.
How many followers do you have there?
About the same as on Twitter, which is like 100 and some change, maybe.
Well, you should post it and then boost it, because that's what I just did. Because you get those little tokens, and you get like one of them every couple of weeks or so. So you'll have a number. You can make sure some people see it.
You know what?
It's
They
actually-
they gave me like 5 of them recently, and I was like, wow, 5 Minds tokens.
I actually have a bunch because this one guy keeps sending me like bundles of 10 or 20. But I haven't been making very good videos recently, so I haven't really been using them. But I should and make more good videos.
I know at this point I make more videos than you do, which is like funny and backwards.
Yeah, I've been starting to do scripted videos because like I lost the regular scripting mojo. You know, I just kind of like got out of the habit of it, and I'm not quite back into it yet. And then I realized, you know, if I'm not making videos at all, I'm kind of miserable. I have no reason to feel like I'm a decent person anyway. You know, like when I at least make a video, even if it's not a great one, if it's a non-scripted one, I get comments from people and they're all like, oh, cool, that's a good story, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, I feel better, you know? And also it keeps my engagement up on my channel, because if you don't post videos for a week, you post another one and it gets, you know, like I'll get like 500 views or something, which is tragic. So it's just better to keep cranking out the videos. And so now that I'm going to be doing that, I'm going to start scripting more, and maybe I'll have a real channel again that's actually making lots of content like it used to be.
Good. That's good stuff. Get back on the radar. Back into the algorithm.
Because, you know, I don't want to be called what do you call me? A pretentious has-been or something? That random guy on Twitter.
Oh yeah, what was that? No, he said you were being self-important because you were inquiring as to why he was like so pissed off at Allison over the Memorial Day thing.
It was so, they had such a stupid little anti-SJW church lady reaction. Like, if anybody needed any more proof that like most of the people who were the anti-SJWs, or maybe the skeptic sphere, really didn't have any reason to make videos, it's that how they are acting now. Like, all you have to do is, like, they're just so bored, and they're trying to, like, find something to care about all of the time. And they're like, who do you think you are to presume that you can explain my Twitter boundaries to Allison and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, I'm actually really just bad at using Twitter. I don't know what the argument was about. And they're like, well, you could search for it. I'm like, I did. I couldn't find it. And they're like, yeah, but who do you think you are? I'm like, Allison's friend. And then they all shut up. I was like, okay, really? That's the stuff that you care about in life? So.
No,
Yeah,
yeah.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think it was mostly a status thing. There isn't really any status in making that kind of, you know, basic anti-feminist content anymore, so they don't really have anything to do with their lives now.
Well, yeah, and it was... So, like, I actually made a whole video about this called... something like, were the SJWs right about the anti-SJWs? And it was I made it around the time that blood sports became a thing, and they had made this video on Mike, like .mike or whatever, about how, you know, the day the SJWs disappeared, and they had imitations of Tommy Loren, Milo Yiannopoulos, and then Andy and Chris Worski, and they were like, yeah, at first I was happy, and then I realized, what am I gonna do? Am I gonna actually have anything to talk about? And they all made fun of that video, except for, you know, then the SJW, like the easy SJW videos kind of did disappear, and then all the people who didn't really know what they were talking about, like Andy Worski and crap, they didn't have anything to talk about, so they just went all bonkers. And it was like, wait, they kind of had a point with you guys, not with me, because, you know, I have had a relatively interesting life in the entertainment scene, and I was actually involved in doing stuff for a very, very long time until SJWs ruined the artistic scene in, you know, far leftist areas that I was in, like Seattle and San Francisco. And so I realized, okay, well, this is not going to go away until everybody tries to make it go away, because they want to take over everything. And I actually know a lot about them. So I'm going to start this channel and I'm going to, you know, do my thing that way. But that's not what the majority of people were doing. Most of them were like, oh my God, look at this Milo Stewart person. She's dumb. You know, they couldn't really say why. They could just make kind of like one-liners in between things. And it seems that stance has led these people into following the trends of like what is, because they were kind of searching for outrage in a certain sense. They were searching for stupid bedroom feminist videos that made them not necessarily angry, but there was a certain element of outrage to it. Like they were like, what? How can this stupid chubby girl say that chubby girls are more attractive? What? You know? And then once they ran out of that to do, it's like they had to somehow fill the void by talking trash about other things. And then it became each other, sort of, and they became little factions of people who were always fighting. And it's really funny because I never got involved in that. Like I was just like, oh, leave me out of this. Jesus, this is stupid. And a number of people held me in contempt for like having that attitude. Like they're like, you're pretentious, you think you're better than everyone. And it's like,
yeah, well, they're kind of like
it's like, dude, if the shoe fits, you know, like,
they're like, what it is they're going for the super low hanging fruit, and they want to have that effect, right? And you can only make those kinds of videos if the fruit is low hanging enough. And I think that's kind of the issue. They got all the eggs in one basket. They got to keep doing it that way. But then also like these anti SJWs, a lot of them, they're kind of like people who like to cut the crust off of their sandwiches. Right? They just want like the sweet white bread part in the middle that's just like making fun of like crazy feminists, but they don't want the crust attached to it, which is, you know, there's actually some issues going on here, you know? And then Alison Tiemann comes around with her fucking rye bread, and they're like, "Argh!" And it's like, rye bread is like, delicious.
She's like, I actually care about the underlying motives that would inspire these people to make these videos. And they're like, you're dumb for doing that. Actually, I'm shoe on head, and I think I'm a feminist again because, well, I got bored and I never really knew what I was talking about anyway, because the closest thing to a brain I had was named Greg.
Yeah.
Well, even the ones who I would imagine do have brains, there's someone from that whole anti-SJW scene who, I mean, I would imagine she has medical training. I think she's a doctor. And now she's doing the same thing that Shu and the rest of them are doing. But now she's gone on to making anti-vaxxer videos. Yeah, she's reverted back to that whole scene.
Who?
Didn't want to name her. Zoe Does Life.
Oh.
I remember her. I remember she made her video about like the red pill. I didn't keep track of her though after that. She's really pretty. That's about all I know about her.
I don't know. Because I
haven't subscribed to her after my old YouTube account got purged.
But it's just, the reason I mention it is because it's just, I can't imagine a bigger waste of time, to be honest, going after anti-vaxxers. I mean, yes, I disapprove of it as well, obviously, but...
Yeah. Everyone does.
Everyone. Yeah, exactly, everyone does, so it's just
it's another... like, yeah. Let's go after another target. Oh, I know, pedophiles. That'll make us edgy.
Oh, yeah. Flat earthers are dumb. Alright, well, if anyone's looking at the screen, I have Jane Caputi is a feminist. You can tell by her photo. She is exactly as you'd imagine her looking, and now I have her on the screen. So look at this beautiful screen I've made. I have the photo. I have the pictures of the pages, and a bingo card, and a feminist in the corner.
You know,
It's perfect.
What she looks like? She looks kind of like what's fuck. I'm having a brain fart. What's the name of this famous British celebrity who turned out to be like the one-man grooming gang after he died? Turned out to
Jimmy
be
Savile.
yeah. Kind of looks
She-
like Jimmy Savile.
She does look trans.
All right. Well, let's
Uh,
get through the first page here. Because what always happens is, you know, we read a little bit of it and then we get bogged down by something because it's always outrageous. So I'm gonna make sure we get a little bit of this under our belt before we get off on a tangent. So this section's called "Pumping Iron John" by Jane Caputi and Gordine O. Mackenzie. So it is co-written. It opens with a quote: "Gender difference exists in every cell of the body," which was something that Robert Bly said. So they're not having that. They're not very happy with the notion that gender difference exists, period, let alone in every cell of the body. She says, the January 20th, 1992 issue of Time magazine tries to tell us just what kind of a year it is going to be for women and men. The headline reads, "Why are men and women different?" Right away, we notice that another question is not being asked. Are men and women different? The title itself presumes and enforces sexual difference. A subtitle continues, "It isn't just upbringing. New studies show they are born that way." A dark-haired boy and a blonde girl, dressed not too subtly in red, white, and blue, stand together. The backdrop is a brick wall. She is looking at him with an expression of grinning indulgence, one hand placed shyly against his elbow. He uses one of his hands to raise the cuff of his shirt so that he can flex his biceps, which he lovingly gazes upon. She is looking at him. She is touching him. He is oblivious to her. He is touching himself. They both gaze at his small, swollen muscle. She is pumping him up with her attention, touch, and gaze. He is pumping himself. They are both pumping Iron John. The message couldn't be clearer. The women's movement and contemporary women are up against a brick wall. The so-called wild men of the contemporary men's movement, who incessantly drum out the message of innate gender difference and, implicitly, inequality between women and men, must be chanting, "Ho!"
They must be chanting "ho."
Yeah, it's H-O, ho. I think that's something that a lot of the mythopoetics chant out in the forest, but
They're chanting "ho's mad."
they're chanting ho's mad. Ho! It's mad. Okay, I'm just gonna remove the page as I go through. Yeah, and this second page here turned out real blurry, so I do apologize for that. I'm gonna use a better camera for next week. Because every week we just increase the production value a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. There's a lot going on just in that little introduction there. I like how, to her, the very notion that men and women are different, you know, automatically implies inequality. So this idea that there's a distinction between things being actually the same versus like equal treatment or equal opportunity, you know, that's thrown out the window. So this idea that like feminists are kind of aiming towards like this future where, oh no, my stream went offline.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, since the stream is offline, you can use it to change the resolution before. Oh wait, never mind. It's online, I think.
Oh, good. Yeah, we just went offline for a moment there, but it looks like we're back.
On that point, it's interesting that leftists seem to, not just specifically feminism, but leftists in general seem to romanticize empathy, but this point really ought to be made more, which is that if the whole shtick is that everybody has to be the same to be worthy of your empathy, then that's not really a feat of empathy, if you see what I'm saying. It's like this suggestion that if, unless it is the case that everybody's literally the same, then there must be injustice.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it really is echoed in this idea that they're like, little girls need to have like the female role model in all media, otherwise she has no hero to relate to. And it's like, I'm pretty sure at least everyone has met like one little girl who's like, I think Batman's awesome, you know? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, there was this little Mexican girl when I was living in San Francisco, and she was dressed up as Robin for Halloween, and I was stoked because I really like the Teen Titans, and so I showed her my Justice League wallet that I had, and she was all into it, and her parents thought it was really cute.
yeah, exactly. It's just, well, we give out stickers when we have our students, right? And like we have this problem where they'll get an even number of like the superhero stickers and like the princess stickers. And I've explained to them we have to get more of the boy stickers than the girl stickers because some of the girls like the boy stickers, but almost none of the boys want a princess sticker, you know? So then like a few weeks will go by and then we have nothing but princess stickers and the boys are like rolling their eyes like what do I do with this? Like, where's Spider-Man? And I'm like, well, like 1 in 5 of the girls took a Spider-Man sticker. It's tragic, really. It's, and these are the issues. This is why we have a men's movement. Damn it! This.
Girls' toys suck.
I don't know. I don't.
Yes.
They're not. I mean, kinda.
There's some people that like them. Like, there's a lot of gay boys that actually said that they like them. I played with my sister's Barbies after she was done with them, except for I used them to play with my action figures, and I also made a Barbie's House of Horrors where I like decapitated them and put their heads through pencils and put acrylic red paint on them to like make it look like blood and everything.
So basically, you're Sid from Toy Story. Just like made that. Actually, you know what? That would actually make an awesome premise for like an actually scary horror movie. If it was just all about Sid and just like this horror of like the toys having to live in that kind of an environment. Because that was scary. That was legit scary.
How old were you when you saw that?
When I saw the movie Toy Story?
Yeah.
I mean, when it came out in like I think 95 or something. Like I was
So
really
you
little.
were like, yeah, you're like actually a little kid because I was old enough to be like basically an adult when that came out.
Oh my god, that movie like makes you have so much irrational empathy for your like object. I'm pretty sure that movie is responsible for like hoarders.
For what? Oh, for hoarders. Like
anyone like my age who's a hoarder, it's like Toy Story, huh? And then they'll be
Like
like,
the
"Oh
little-
my god!"
like the little alien thing. Like, yeah, I have been chosen.
Kind of, yeah, right? Because like think about that. Like imagine from their perspective, you get chosen, and then like some little fucker forgets you when he moves. That's sad. Like,
He threw it. He gave it to his dog.
did you guys see the ending of Toy Story 3?
I haven't seen any one of them past the first one.
Okay, Toy Story 3 is actually really messed up. It has a lot of scenes that are like really actually scary. It's like a really surprisingly dark movie.
So was Incredibles 2.
I never saw Incredibles 2, and now I kind of want to see it.
I saw it in the theater with my mom, and my mom was like, she had wanted to see some like dog show documentary that followed the lives of purebred dogs from when they were puppies. And my mom's like 74, and it literally sold out. Like the person in front of me bought the last ticket, and so I had told her, I was like, well, they're also playing The Incredibles 2, and I would see that. It was at the cheap theater, and so they had Incredibles 2 seats, and it's like actually a really intense action movie, and it's this like very intense visual Pixar style, and there was a part in it where I couldn't even follow what was going on. There was like all of these, there's probably like 12 characters fighting each other, and like one of them could like go through other dimensions by creating portals and crap like that, and I was just like, I felt like I was about to siege, and my mom was like veritably traumatized by it. Like she was like, God, it was so violent. I thought it was going to be like a kid's but I think it was because it was it came out, so long after the first Incredibles, probably over 10 years. And so it was probably made for the people who remember that from being a little kid when they're older, like when they're teenagers.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And actually, that kind of explains the phenomenon with Toy Story 3 also, but all I know is there were a lot of crying babies in that theater when I saw Toy Story 3, and I don't blame them. I was like, yeah, like, I'd cry too. I was a little, like, crap. It was scary. Alright, on that note, let's see what else these ladies have to say about Robert Bly. Robert Bly's Iron John, the Bible of the men's movement, topped the bestseller list for much of 1991. In this work, Bly laments the lot of soft and faceless men who remain under the maiming influence of the mother and or dominant female lovers. He proclaims that we live in a world bereft of male initiation, and that this is a society in which there is not enough father, leaving men wounded and beset with grief. She puts wounded in quotes there too, so she doesn't mean that. Although we'll expand upon these points later, we must take a moment here to seriously question Bly's credibility as a cultural observer. Doesn't the man go to the movies or watch television? Ritual activities in themselves, where stories of boys turning into men and paeans to father power are omnipresent. That's an interesting word. Paeans. Paeans. Does anyone know that word?
How it's spelled?
Paean. It's like an
Paean.
ode.
An ode? Okay, so like a... Yeah. I guess from context I can kind of tell. I've never seen that word before. Well, I guess besides the last time I read this, like a couple of years ago. Okay, sorry. I got derailed there. Many of the most popular films of all time concern some aspect of male initiation, like Star Wars, Home Alone, Top Gun. I love these references. So like early 90s. Star Wars, Home Alone, Top Gun. And just about anything by Steven Spielberg, Jaws, E.T., and Hook. Television, of course, is a medium notorious for its father fixation, from Father Knows Best to The Cosby Show. With some notable exceptions, Roseanne, all too frequently mothers play second banana, like in Home Improvement, or have been disappeared by the storyline altogether, Davis Rules, Full House, even though in reality there are many more single female parents than male. As a recent headline in New York Times summed up current TV demographics, poof, the mommies vanish in sitcom land. Okay, that's amazing. That's amazing that what she's doing is she's taking the actual empirical fact, right, that you have this growing number of single mother homes, and that's not relevant to this idea that there's a lack of fathers in society. But the abundance of fathers in media shows that, no, see, like they're totally still there. Did is anyone seeing how insane this is?
TV is not real life. Maybe that's the thing. Feminists might not understand that television and real life are different things. So that's why they are so high and very invested in the media critique, because they literally think that fiction and reality are the same thing, or they think that society can be shaped and molded by media so easy. Like you just inject their degenerate ideology into television, and the society just changes because biology is not a thing, and everyone is a blank slate, and other creationist myths.
Yeah, like wouldn't she be making the exact same case if it was reversed? If it was like overwhelmingly single fathers, but then in the media we had all this like motherhood everywhere? Like wouldn't she just like make the same case, and would it not be a stronger case? Because I mean, in terms of being a cultural observer, it's funny to me that what happens in sitcoms and in movies matters more than like the actual reality of the culture. Like that's I'm just a little bit bewildered. I just like need a moment. I love how some of these references have they're amusing now, right? Like referencing Roseanne and the Cosby Show, and it's like, wow, if only she knew like how this shit was gonna be blowing up in 20 years or whatever. Such trends are okay. The funny part about mentioning Roseanne, right, is now you have like this clip of Roseanne being like you know what? I don't think women should be voting. Shut them up, bitch. Go home, right? Like, Okay. Such trends are highly significant, for the mass media serve as our culture's primary dispensary of myth and ritual. Here, stories are told that transmit and reinforce mainstream values, that tell us how the world works, instruct us as to what is normal or deviant, right or wrong, that form both the individual and the collective psyche. No, that's parents, right? That's actually like parenting. So are supposed to help form that, not TV. God damn it.
You know, if TV does the parenting for you, you should not be allowed to have children.
I guess that's what's going on here. Is this going to be the theme? Is that we have to keep reminding her TV doesn't reel, ma'am. TV doesn't reel. Robert Bly himself is fully aware of the power of story to affect consciousness. In Iron John, he dives deeply into the patriarchal archives, surfacing with a grim brother's tale, Iron John, which he offers as an alchemical parable for modern men. In his view, Iron John, aka the Wild Man, is the source of true masculinity, repressed and denied in modern culture. The figure with whom Bly believes all men must connect in order to transmute from boys to men.
Am I the only one who thinks that Iron John sounds like a euphemism? Hey,
I mean,
maybe want to see my Iron John?
No, that'd be Wooden John.
Oh, I call it Iron John because it's harder than wood.
I suppose. But is that see a doctor level of hard? If it's iron, it's supposed to be wood. But so just a quick recap. The Iron John parable. It has to do with there's a wild man out in the woods, and people find him, and they put him in a cage, and then the son of the king and the queen, he's playing with his ball, and the ball rolls into the cage, and Iron John says, "Hey, if you let me out of my cage, I'll give you the ball back." And eventually the boy decides to do it. He goes and he steals the key to the cage, which is under his mother's pillow, and unlocks it. And then when he realizes that he'll get in trouble for what he did, he decides to go with Iron John out into the woods. And all of this is really psychologically symbolic of basically a disconnect from the boy to his parents, particularly his mother, but both his parents really, to go and have some kind of male mentorship. And then through this, he becomes a man. And he kind of relates this to other stories and other rituals throughout, like human history and human cultures. And yeah, that's what she's referencing here. So the feminists, they don't like this idea that the wild man is put in a cage and that he needs to be let out in some way, which almost goes without saying. But let's hear her take on it. She says, "In the fable, Iron John is a wild, extremely hairy man who lives in a state of enchantment in a forbidding forest beneath a deep lake. The king has him brought back to the castle, where he is kept locked in an iron cage. The king's son accidentally rolls his golden ball into the cage. To get it back, he agrees to steal the key to the cage from under his mother's pillow and free Iron John. Dreading punishment, the prince runs away with Iron John, eventually undergoing various ordeals of initiation until, aided by his hairy mentor," hairy mentor sounds like a euphemism also.
This really sounds like an euphemism.
"He proves his manhood by besting an enemy in battle and marrying a princess, at which point Iron John is freed from his enchantment. During the past 2 decades, the contemporary women's movement has questioned and rejected rigid sex and gender stereotypes, creating new myths and definitions of female power, and naming ourselves to be wild, that is, undomesticated and outside of the bounds of patriarchy, most vividly in Mary Daly's Gynecology, 1978. Quick side note, you guys remember Mary Daly? You guys remember what she's infamous for?
No.
No.
She is the feminist academic who unironically advocated for reducing the male population to something like 10% of the population.
Oh, that's one.
And I think it was in this book. I think it was in this book, in Gynecology, the one that she's referencing. I'm pretty sure it's in the same fucking one. She's referencing an actual genocidal maniac radical feminist. Just had to
Well,
throw
the thing
that
is
out
that if she thinks of herself as wild, then she should be put into a zoo with other wild animals.
Well,
But
but you
just
see,
like
the ecofeminists don't like that. They don't like the concept of wild, and for the exact reason that you've demonstrated here, Mister. Because when you say something is wild, the implication is that it must be tamed, it must be controlled.
well, no, just lock them away in a zoo. Don't domesticate them. It's not worth it. It's like trying. Oh, no, it would be a bad example because unlike feminists, well, skunks can be domesticated. Is just surgically remove the gland that makes the stink. But in case of feminists, you'll have to remove their barely functional brain, which wouldn't change much because they don't use it anyways.
Well, transhumanism will close the gap eventually. I'm white pilled on that. But actually, me and Ashley were having a conversation about this. It might have been like a month ago or so, about the idea of like domestication of animals, right? Because there's that famous experiment with the foxes, right? Where like they breed foxes for a few generations, and then like really quickly they're able to have like two radically different kinds of foxes. Some that are super sweet and docile and cuddly and like the best foxes ever, and the other ones are just like crazy, savage, like nightmare creatures. And it made me realize like why don't we tame and domesticate all animals and like make the world like a kinder, gentler place? Like for sure, like why aren't the feminists in favor of that? You know what I mean? Like is anything really of lost if we tame things that are wild, particularly if they're really, really violent?
Oh, because they're violent for a reason. They evolved for because these behaviors evolved for the environment they are. Because that's why pretty much every domesticated animal who escapes is unable to. Well, no, actually, most of them are unable to become wild again. Well, some of them, like for example, pigs. I think pigs are the ones that get wild the quickest, just almost immediately. Because pigs were never like domesticated per se, as their wild behavior and the behavior of domesticated pigs isn't that different.
Even though
Um,
they say pigs are really smart though. I wonder if pigs like they were so smart that they could just like double think out of it, just in case they needed to tap back into it. But
well, the smarter the animal is, the generally the less this animal is relying on instincts and more reliant on learned behavior. And learned behaviors can be unlearned, and new behaviors relearned. Even though there's a saying that old dogs are hard to teach old dog a new trick, but it actually is possible. Even when they're old, they still are able to learn new behaviors. So that's why it is, I think.
the thing is though, like if you let's look at dogs, right? The dogs that live the most comfortable, best lives are the Hong Kong alpha purse dogs. Like they're the true alphas, and it's because they're cute and they're cuddly and they wear little pig costumes for Year of the Pig, and they're being carted around in little proms, and they get brushed all the time, and like they're just adorable little things, right? And like those are legitimate adaptations to the environment, and they get to enjoy a life of obscene luxury because of it. So I would argue that the true alphas are these like domesticated little alpha purse dogs. There we go. That's the hot take. And in humans, it would be like Korean pop singers. Just- anyway. No, that's not a that's an unfair comparison. That is not a comparison. It is not fair.
Yeah, dogs cannot sing.
They can dance though. Actually, some dogs can sing. There was that one like Christmas CD. Anyway, it was auto-tuned, but I still count it. Okay. The feminist movement has also challenged men to invent new definitions of masculinity to make the qualitative break from a world ordered by a masculinity understood to be aggressive, violent, and unemotional.
Well,
Oh wait, that's bingo.
This is
That's bingo. We need let's see. I think just express yourself. Men just need to express themselves. Do, 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 do. Bam.
well, I can express myself, and my when I express myself about feminists, it's usually something you cannot say on television.
I think this is also deconstructing masculinity. I mean, she's saying redefine it, but She doesn't want the original masculinity. I don't think that's far-fetched. So all I need is gender pay gap and homophobia, then I'm going to have a bingo this way.
The thing is that they want to redefine things. Well, it's kind of like what creationists do. You cannot define things into existence, nor can you change reality by changing definitions. Definitions are not prescriptive; they are descriptive. So basically, if you have a description of something, and if you find something in reality that fits the description, well, you know what to call it. So by redefining masculinity, you do not change masculinity. You just make the term means something else, but reality doesn't care about your definition, or reality doesn't care about your feeling, snowflake. Feminism destroyed with facts and logic.
It's funny how it really kind of all links together when you think of this affinity for witches that feminists have, combined with the idea that they use words as magic spells. They literally are just creating definitions, and then they're hoping that this is going to have some top-down effect on reality. I think it really is like a wishful... it's really magical thinking, ultimately.
Yeah.
An argument can be made for toxic masculinity here, but I made my bingo sheets a little too easy. It's a little too easy, I think, with some of these. So we'll wait for it to be a real slam dunk on toxic masculinity. But I got a little hash... oh, where's my... there we go. I got a little hashtag right here, waiting for it. And I think I gave myself like 8 of these or something, so... alright. Let's see, where was I? Oh, here we go. Ooh, we're gonna have a little bit of ableism here. This is gonna be fun. At first, some women might be hopeful that the men's movement would concern itself with these sorts of radical changes, but despite some double talk to the contrary, the song these wild men are singing is Return to Gender. That is rigid, bipolar gender roles. See, that's ableist, ma'am. That's ableist. The feminists of the future would not approve of you using bipolar in that way. Just as David Duke and his followers responded to the pressures of an anti-racist movements with the founding of the National Association for the Advancement of White People, much of the activity going on under the rubric of the men's movement, composed largely of white middle-class men, is a form of masculinist nationalism. That is, a reconstellation of patriarchal rules and roles and an attempt to consolidate cockocratic power in response to challenges from the women's movement. The men's movement.
Great.
Yeah, cockocratic. She has a footnote for that too. I'm gonna just check that out. Footnote number 3. What is that for cockocratic? Oh, I went too far back. Where? I want to see what is her citation for cockocratic. She writes, cockocratic is derived from cockocracy, which means the state of supernatural erections. The place-time where the air is filled with the crowing of cocks, the joking of jocks, the droning of clones, the sniveling of snickers and snudges, the noisy parades and processions of prickers. Pecker order.
Fuck.
See Mary Daly with Jane Caputi, Webster's first new intergalactic wikidictionary of the English language. Wow.
That's
Natural boners, what the fuck?
The rhymes and alliteration were kind of nice. It's well written, ma'ams. I like pecker order.
But on that last section, I think the first thing to note is that the great majority of that little list, compendium of adjectives she went through, the great majority of feminists, like easily 99% of academic feminists, are white, middle-class women, typically of Northwestern European descent. So they're just as white and middle-class. This point isn't made often enough.
Oh, that's the bad part of intersectionality. That's the part of intersectionality you're not supposed to point out.
Yeah.
So, do you have another point? Let me cut you off there.
But this whole shtick with defining and redefining masculinity, it doesn't even matter what anybody does or doesn't want it to be. It just is. You have a set of behaviors which have also been incentivized in a more absolute sense, or you could say a more distal sense, because of the selection pressures that human beings have been subjected to, and specifically that men have been subjected to throughout their evolutionary history. And then there are also more recent changes, like, for instance, working class men who lived, it's said that a feature of traditional masculinity is physical strength, for instance. But several hundred years ago, working class men, they wouldn't have been hitting the gym and worshipping the image of themselves in the mirror and such like, because they probably didn't have the money to do this. They were working physical jobs, which is why the people, now that those physical jobs have dissipated, or at least to a very large degree because of industrialization, the service sector is a lot larger than it used to be, and the IT sector, which has come about in the last few decades, and so on. So there isn't this environmental incentive to cultivate that anymore. So that aspect of masculinity changed. And I think that's pretty much just the way that it works. There's genes and the environment, and environment almost never works the way anybody suggests. It's not just a matter of what some authority does or doesn't dictate. Like, oh, I want it to be this. It really doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense, because then they're looking at things, and then they're wondering why it's not conforming, and then, like, because they already have their conclusion, they can just make up an explanation after the fact anyway. Let's see. I was kind of like looking over that. I got so distracted by the cockocratic comment and that silly little footnote she had there. But yeah, but they really do circle back and criticize the men's movement of the time for being white, because they used so much like native like instruments and symbols and stories and things like that. So they're making like a cultural appropriation argument, which is whatever.
Maybe everybody else should stop culturally appropriating white technology.
Yeah, I mean, if you apply that standard consistently, then I mean, what do you have left? It's
Right.
basically you end up with ethnostates all the way down. Like, what do you really want? You know. Okay, so the men's movement, as epitomized by Bly's writings, while pretending to be a movement for liberation, is actually a manifestation of an authoritarian backlash, and joins the political and religious right in reinforcing separatism, hierarchy, contempt for the other, and invidious distinctions between women and men. So can you believe that so Prince, you weren't here for this, but I showed a little bit of Robert Bly and his poetry, and he's, an old man who likes his drums. He's a little bit weird, but he's harmless. He's a poet, right? And this bitch is comparing him to David Duke, comparing him and his movement to David Duke. He's saying you guys are literally the Klan. Like, that's how hysteric this crap is. Let's see. I'm just checking. Do we still, Prince? If you're still here, I can't hear you. Are you just listening right now? He might have stepped outside for a little bit too. But just in case you're trying to speak, we can't hear you.
Well,
he's laying down. Oh, okay.
In the chat, I'm going laying down, but I'll be still listening. We'll come back if I have something to say.
Gotcha. Sounds like a plan. And then I also wanted to mention, Terrence mentioned in the chat, the comment regarding Mary Daly. Okay, so I might have been incorrect about the 10% figure, because I think you're probably correct that it came from Gearhart. Mary Daly did also support some form of genocide of males. But the 10% figure, that actually, I might have gotten that from Gearhart. So, just for the purpose of accuracy. But yeah, that's what part of the confusion of dealing with feminists is. It's hard to just keep the genocidal maniacs in order. I forget which one says what percentage. Maybe Mary Daly might have said 25%. So I'll give her some charity where it's due. The next section here is called Zeus Juice. Ooh, Zeus Juice has a footnote. Let's see what it says. Zeus Juice was suggested by our very funny friend, Dorothy Johnson. Why is that a footnote? The last footnote was so good. I'm a little disappointed now.
Because footnotes are le smart.
Yeah, right. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna write a book, and I'm gonna have just like the dumbest footnotes everywhere. Be like, Zeus Juice, it rhymes with goose. Just to like punish people who look at footnotes.
And it also rhymes with Jews. Because, feminazi.
That's not funny. That's not funny. What? The stream's gonna go down again. Just over that. It'll be literally that. Yeah, Princess drinking Kratom. Kratom is great. I mean, I didn't actually, need it for anything. I was just like, it's interesting, and I tried it. So I guess that for me it was a little different. But, okay, so Zeus Juice. In his pursuit of true masculinity, Bly urges a return not only to hairy fairy tales, but to ancient manly deities, notably the Greek god Zeus. Zeus, as Robert Graves extensively demonstrates, was an incessant rapist, molesting both mortal women and ancient goddesses. Moreover, his reign ushered in an era of blight for women. As Grave notes, the hitherto intellectually dominant Greek woman degenerated into an unpaid worker and breeder of children wherever Zeus and Apollo were the ruling gods. Bly expediently ignores these factors and instead rhapsodizes over Zeus as the embodiment of positive male energy. Zeus energy, which encompasses intelligence, robust health, compassionate decisiveness, goodwill, generous leadership. Zeus energy is male authority accepted as the good of the community, unquote. Anti-patriarchal women and men would do well to defy Bly, the Iron Age guru, exhorting us to give over our power to rapist divinities and self-styled father figures for our own good. Bly neatly reverses the real meaning of Zeus's masculinity, and such double-thinking inversion structures and such double-thinking inversion structures much of the movement. If we understand Zeus not as a rapist, but as a benevolent authority, we can more readily accept elite men as victims, not victimizers. In much of men's movement ideology, men identify themselves as victims of absent fathers, of a contaminating and encompassing femininity, and of angry feminists and insubordinate wives and girlfriends. So there we have it. That's her take on male victimization. Is she saying the perpetrators of all men's issues, at least all the ones that she felt were worth mentioning here, so presumably the most important ones, would be absent fathers. So the absent fathers themselves weren't classed as victims. It's the absent fathers. And then angry feminists and insubordinate wives and girlfriends. So in her view, these are the number one men's issues. Is like my wife or my girlfriend is insubordinate, and my father wasn't around.
Well, maybe by insubordinate, it's a nice euphemism for how a woman can stab someone to death and then get a really really short sentence for that because pussy pass. Remember when not long ago there was some crazy bitch who almost killed her boyfriend and she didn't get any prison sentence because she was a medical student. By the way, this means that she was a really, really bad medical student if she stabbed him so many times and failed to kill him. As medical students should be able to know where the important organs are. So I doubt that she would be a great
Yeah,
doctor.
she was probably affirmatively actioned into that position.
Oh, that was Lavinia, whatever her name was. I remember that one. I posted it on my Facebook saying, "Here's an example of the pussy pass," and had a bunch of like white knights all up in my shit being like, "No," and I'm just like, "Are you retarded? Like, can you imagine a man stabbing a woman this many times and like getting this kind of a sentence?" Like,
I had this conversation with you in Discord. As much as everybody just takes the piss out of them, the thing that's at a certain point, this sycophantic behavior of white knights is kind of terrifying, because it's like they literally have no real morals or principles, and the moral center of their entire universe is just pleasing women. And if enough women said that they wanted something, they would make sure it became an embodied political issue that we all had to care about, lest you be a bad man. If women decide that they want to abort their 10-year-olds and shout about it loudly enough, then yeah, that has to be a go. Because yeah, gotta please the women.
Well, the only solace is that the ones who are like the more radical feminists, they are the least ones to have white knights because they are fugly. That's the only solace here.
mm-hmm.
Oh, and just a note on the Greek pantheon that she was blithering on about. The interesting thing about them is that, with the exception of a few Greek neo-pagans who are few and far between, it's in no way germane to modern geopolitics. This stuff about Zeus raping goddesses and all this. Would be interesting to see what her take was on Islam.
Also, in Greek mythology, like there was so much degeneracy. Like what Zeus was doing was really, really benign compared to some really, really degenerate shit. So just
Yeah,
read
and the females just as much as the males, indeed.
yeah. Oh, there's such we have such sites to show you. So it's what kind of weird people invent all this stuff, but yeah, it's so really.
Yeah, and so there's something to be said for this idea that like sure, maybe we shouldn't point to someone like Zeus and make him like the embodiment of positive masculine energy, right? Like maybe there's an argument there, but it's just totally diminished by her kind of taking it in the opposite direction.
Yeah, the problem with that is that literally no one does that. So
Yeah, well, apparently Robert Bly that this is a direct quote, although I'm not sure what the entire context of it is. So you might even call him a masculinist based on something like that. But at the same time, even in his depiction of it, the fact that he's kind of erasing Zeus raping people, it's kind of weird to take that as like an endorsement of rape, right? Like if he's sugarcoating it and like not including that, clearly that's not something that he is including in his conception of positive like male attributes. You know what I mean? Like
Well, it's called whitewashing, just the same as feminists when they talk about their heroes. They don't mention like when they praise Margaret Sanger, they don't mention that she wanted to make America white again,
right.
and wanted to use birth control as a means of controlling the population of what she called human weeds, and to weed them out eventually, like a good gardener.
I'm basically on board with at least a version of that, but I'll not get into that here.
Well, I think that if we're going to have governments with welfare programs, like one thing to consider is why don't we have two tiers where you have a higher tier of welfare if you choose to get yourself sterilized. Like that's my take on eugenics. I mean, personally, I prefer for us just to not have a welfare state because it's morally reprehensible. But if we're going to put that on the table, then like why not reward people who sterilize themselves?
Well, there's also the thing that some European countries are doing now, which is being praised by some people. I think I don't think it's something that we should be praising. These attempts to incentivize fertility on the part of Hungarian women
Yeah, I was just gonna say that was the thing in Hungary. It's not gonna work.
by means of monetary handouts. There are so many things that are wrong with this. One thing that's wrong with it is that the problem ultimately isn't reproduction per se. It's who's reproducing. And the way things are right now, it's the people who are less economically ascendant, poor people, and low IQ people who are doing the most reproducing. And it's rich people, wealthy people. With some exceptions, it's possible that there's some threshold you cross at which point it becomes a bit of a sort of a U-shaped distribution and it starts to climb up again. But that's at, the extreme right tail of the distribution. Some studies have shown that specifically in America. But for the most part, the correlation between wealth and fertility is negative. So it isn't immediately clear to me what they think this is going to do. It's just a waste of money.
Well, it's have you seen Idiocracy? On the plus side, stupid people are easier to control.
Oh, but the Hungarians are so based. Yeah, they would be more based if their government knew shit about actual human behavior or science, etc. But politicians typically don't.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to be just like stereotypical libertarian, but it's a government program. Like it's not gonna work, even in the best case scenario. I just realized we get to put our little hashtag on rape. Yay!
Also, did you know that hashtags are white supremacist hate
I know
symbols?
that's why I chose the hashtag, not to support white supremacy, but because we're fighting back. I got little pink hashtags here because we are not going to let the hacker known as 4chan steal our symbol. We are taking it back to celebrate the work of these very intellectual women, these wonderful academics who have enlightened us regarding gender. We're taking it back. Also, these bitches, like, basically, like, they are white supremacy. I'm gonna... Oh, your face is on the wrong layer. I can't put the hashtag on your face. That's too much work. Okay, I'm gonna leave this up here. Alright, let's continue. Some estimates suggest that over 250,000 men have participated in men-only workshops, conferences, and weekend fraternal adventures. Adventures is in quotes. Here, frequently in wilderness settings, they engage in drum beating, screaming, chanting, sweat lodging, dancing, crying, hugging, and playing Big Daddy to one another in a dying world, and no doubt terrorizing whatever indigenous animal life still exists. According to the tenets of the men's movement, it is of paramount importance that younger men overcome their distrust of older men and bond together in son-father dyads to heal their wounds. In Bly's view, men have been deprived of initiation into manhood due to the structuring of industrial society that removed fathers from the home. This absent father syndrome, allegedly, is the source of men's deepest grief. To address this pain and to truly become masculine, Bly contends that men need to surrogate father figure or male mother, not unlike Bly himself. We would not deny that men, even socially elite men, feel grief and have been victimized. All were at one time boys, and, as Kate Millett points out, the rules of patriarchal domination are twofold. 1. Men shall dominate women, and elder men shall dominate younger men. In patriarchy, any group perceived as weaker or other is stereotyped as feminine, including women, people of color, and even male children. As such,
I like how women are stereotyped as feminine. Duh.
yeah, well, that's it. Well, you know what? If we would stop stereotyping them, then maybe they wouldn't. If we would just will it into being, if we would just use the right words with the right definitions, everything else would just follow.
Yeah, the beginning of this as well. She was talking about excuse me, adventures in quotation marks. One of the activities she listed was hugging, like that's something that she takes exception to. Men hugging each other,
Yeah, well,
it would
she's describing her idea of what happens at some of these events, and it's like on the
the
one.
horror.
Well, here's the thing: on the one level, all these feminists are like, well, why can't men just express their emotions? Why can't they just why can't they just get in touch with their emotions and their feminine side? And here she is. She's kind of low key shaming that. They're always trying to have their cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
It's funny
But I mean,
how. No, go ahead.
sorry, go on.
No, just wanted to say that the way she describes it, it sounds more like a bunch of stoner hippies going and dropping acid in the woods.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the mythopoetic movement has kind of a little bit of that flavor. I mean, not to say that they're generally, I think, very anti-drugs and anti-substance, but yeah, it has a little bit of an overlap, at least like kind of on like a aesthetic,
don't-
like flavor-wise level.
They don't even need drugs for their trips.
And I like this little aside about like, oh, and they're probably scared the animals. Like, oh,
Yeah, poor animals.
thanks, Jane. You're so sensitive. You're such a sensitive lady.
Every time you step outside of your house and like there's a bird on your lawn and it flies away, in that moment you scared an animal, because it sees you coming and thinks that you're a predator or at least a potential predator. So people scare animals all the time. It's like,
Well,
Yeah.
you scared the animal. You fucking patriarch.
yeah.
Stepping all heavy. She just drifts out. She just wafts out.
Yeah.
Little birds come and fly onto her shoulders and then pick her up, and they make her lighter so that as she steps, even the grass doesn't bend. Even the grass doesn't bend.
Yeah, she's a feminist Jane, like the Janes sweeping paths in front of them with a brush to avoid stepping on insects and so on. They act, yeah,
Well, her name is Jane, so I guess the shoe fits.
yeah, but they actually are. They are that obsessed with it. It's quite adorable.
Bloody Bush Dimension shows up in the chat, says, I have arrived. Has the Whammon folk made any good points yet? First of all,
No.
sir, that is inappropriate. We do not use the term whammon here because PewDiePie is literally the person who did the New Zealand shooting. PewDiePie did New Zealand, so we do not say whammon here. The correct term is whole people. And yes, hugging is toxic masculinity. And you know what? I think that it deserves a hashtag. I think that it's... Oh, I keep moving the whole sheet because I gotta click on the thing. Okay,
Is
got
there some subset of feminists who refer to women as that, as whole people?
No,
as in-
no. I
as in-
love the pose law of it though. That you were like, wait, really?
Well, the thing is, I wouldn't put it past them
I
because
wouldn't either.
somebody recommended this as a gender-neutral term that women ought to be called menstruators, and
No,
because
I agree with that. I agree with that actually.
yeah, but
Well,
I
that's
saw
it's normative.
somebody saying menstruator sounds like what an actual misogynist would call women, and it does sort of.
It really does. It really does. But
Yeah.
the context was strictly medical, and that's why they used that term is because whatever your position is regarding trans thing, like imagine you're a doctor or a nurse and you have to just treat people, right? And like you just need a term that's gonna get the point across, and now we can't say women because it's like, oh, is that gonna include male to female trans, female to male? Like, what does that mean? Okay, menstruators, right? Menstruators. It's like that's what we care about right now. Are you a menstruator, right? It's like a legitimate different category. So I could see how in a technical sense that it makes sense.
Does that mean for sperm bank workers are going to have to take to using the phrase ejaculators?
Yes.
That's kind of cool.
Well, females technically ejaculate also, don't they?
Yes, but you know what I mean. Okay,
Right.
Spermatogenerators. God.
There we go. That's a good one.
Remember a while back there was this someone they wanted to be trans inclusive, so that's why they refer to vaginas as front holes in some documents.
Well, and my motto is more is more. So I say more terms is
It
more terms.
sounds
Like
like
just make them your term. It's fine, as many as
it
we can have.
also it sounds like the name of a modern art exhibition or a painting. The front hole. Like you could just imagine that, couldn't
Oh
you?
yeah, it sounds profound.
Yes.
Like you're just like, what's in there?
Yeah.
But of course, the real front hole is the journey and the friends you meet along the way. Okay, so I lost my. I need to remember to hold my spot better. Let's see, where was we? Where was we? We was at. Okay, so this is. She's diving into it. This new favorite thing that is very, very old in feminism that I think most anti-feminists aren't aware of: dualism. That's what she's setting up here. She's setting up this whole idea that this phallocentric Western epistemology puts things into dualistic contrasting pairs. And that's why she feels it's necessary to point out that they have clustered women as feminine. Because it's part of a nefarious construction. Because feminine is going to mean bad, right? And it's also going to mean black. And it's also going to mean young. And it's also going to mean disabled. It's going to mean all the bad things because we're all just a bunch of dualistic thinkers that just make these sloppy conflations. And like this is literally how these feminists view basically all of philosophy and literature and art and culture that preceded them. Because men. Like so she says, in patriarchy, any group perceived as weaker or other is stereotyped as feminine, including women, people of color, and even male children. As such, boyhood in patriarchy is frequently an ignominious state. Boys can be humiliated by their fathers with impunity. They, like girls, are sexually exploited by adults, most frequently by adult males, and they are sent off to war by governmental father figures to be maimed and killed. By urging men to heal the wound with their fathers, Bly is urging a truce between elite men, asking younger men to identify with their proper oppressors and unite with the fathers in opposition to women and others, effectively consolidating patriarchal power.
Funny how she forgot to mention that in most of the time when a female is a perpetrator of statutory rape, she gets off with very little punishment, if at all. And feminists are quick to defend her. Remember when there was this bitch who was molesting a boy since he was 8, and Tumblr feminists were defending her as if she didn't do nothing. Remember? And yes, she didn't get any prison sentence.
Oh yeah, and every single time you see a story about a woman abusing a boy, there's always some dumbass in the comments who says, "Where was she when I was a kid?" Right?
When I was 8, I
Probably
wasn't.
probably not as young as age 8, I would imagine.
Yeah, but again, this was written in '92, so this is before I think anyone really was critical of like the work of Mary Koss, before anybody really kind of blew the lid off of this idea that like sexual violence is predominantly male perpetrated. Like that information is relatively new, but at the same time, the reason that information is new is because just these awful feminists were the ones doing the research, and I maintain, deliberately hiding what was actually going on. And it just took like this many years of it going on and on and on before somebody was finally like, hey. Like Christina Hoff Sommers kind of like lightly tapped them on the shoulder and was like, hey guys. And this was like 2 years after this book came out, right? And everyone's like, go away, Christina. It's like, stop criticizing us. Go hang out with Prager, you trad thought, right? And then Christina Hoff Sommers was like, okay. That's my version of feminist history, but no, but it's true that like like it's not like these perpetration rates. I doubt that they've changed that radically. So I would argue probably that if you have a consistent gender neutral standard, that yeah, it seems that there's probably gender parity in perpetration, and there's basically gender parity in terms of victimization as well, and that's a point that feminists, I think, were less eager to deny. Like they're kind of okay admitting that young boys can be victims, so long as the vast majority of perpetrators, in their view, are men. So yeah, it's all so old, but so it's 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 the same story.
The point is just that men are kept morally on the back foot, and that they can keep whinging about them.
Well, and then even in the way that she's depicting this, right? You have this crisis of there not being fathers in houses, and then you have Robert Bly saying, "Here's a solution. We're gonna have men bond, right? Have boys and men bond in a way that's like constructive, a way that can kind of help society and help facilitate mentorship." And then this bitch feminist comes along saying, no, these men and little boys are conspiring together to oppress the women and black people. Like, in a nutshell, that's what she's constructing here.
Oh, it's like feminists always blame men for everything.
Yeah, and the way she's wording it is, that the boys are kind of complicit in it too, and it's just like, have you ever, she can't stop and think, like in the same paragraph where she's gonna mention boys being victims of like sexual violence, she's also going to erase the concept that they're victims of like of not having a proper upbringing, of like not having access to what should be a pretty basic thing, which is like two parents. That should be like a bare minimum, like food, shelter, two parents. But no, instead they're complicit with a phallocentric epistemology and a conspiracy theory to keep the others down. All right, we'll close out this page. She says, Bly writes, as I've participated in men's gatherings since the early 1980s, I've heard one statement over and over from American males, which has been phrased in 100 different ways. There is not enough father. This alleged father lack plagues not only individual men, but our entire culture, which, Bly contends, is desperately hungering for the king. Now, king, she has capitalized. She's referring again to the 4 archetypes of masculinity, which are king, warrior, magician, lover. And that's actually a book. It's a book that you can look up. I wonder who wrote that. This king, warrior, magician, lover. But she showed her hand already. She said this alleged lack of fatherhood. Like, to her, like you have the majority of households run by single mothers, and like to her that's not intrinsically a problem.
Well, just look at which demographic has the biggest fatherlessness problem in the US, and then look at what other problems this demographic has. I'm not saying that one follows from the other, but there's correlation. There's also studies that show that being raised by a single parent correlates with higher chances of being a drug addict or a criminal or other stuff.
Nope, that's all just misogyny. All of that's just misogyny.
Yeah. Just make some noggin jogging, as the kids these days say.
Gets the noggin jogging. So actually, there's an article here on artofmanliness.com, which Art of Manliness is actually a cool blog. I remember I saw this blog even before I discovered the men's movement, and I just thought it was, I thought it was really fascinating. It's written in a really kind of, I don't know, it's written really well, and it's a refreshing take on like male and like masculine issues. And then it occurred to me after I discovered the men's movement that I found this blog, and I thought like, maybe if I'd gotten deeper into this blog, I would have arrived here faster. But I'm gonna go ahead and link this. It's an article they published last year that goes into these 4 different archetypes, but it's been around for quite a while. But I mentioned it on the last stream too. That there's good and bad aspects to each of the 4 archetypes. So you can have kind of too much or not enough of any of them. But it seems like whenever these feminists mention them, they seem to take a view that like all 4 of them are like put on a pedestal and like praised, and that they want like a maximum amount of it. They never seem to go into any depth the idea of like there being a negative or positive aspect to it. But
you know what this reminds me of? A long while ago, I read this cyberpunk novel called Vacuum Flowers, and at one point, this main heroine, she's dating a guy. Well, it's weird. It kind of dates 4 of them, but it's one guy just has 4 artificial personalities, each one correlating to one of those, like king, warrior, all 4 of them. And since it's like it's this is those are engineered personalities. They correspond to those archetypes well, because and also can switch between them at any moment. And this is the idea why he was created is that this a group of those 4 people would be like the minimum necessary for survival outside of society. Because if you have a group, you need at least one to be of each archetype for this group to function properly. So that's why it's in cyberpunk. So there's a lot of weird stuff like that.
Wait, what is this? This sounds really interesting. What is it called?
Vacuum Flowers by Michael Swanwick. Every single book written by Swanwick is a trip and a half.
You said Vacuum Flowers?
Yeah.
Vacuum.
Well, it's just check him out. He's great science fiction writer, but I wouldn't recommend Jack Frost by him. Not because it's a bad book; it's a good book, but it's like the most depressing thing I've ever read. Some people say that the I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream is the darkest science fiction book. No, I think Jack Frost is much worse. It's like legitimately depressing.
Huh.
And it, in I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, it was obviously stated that humanity didn't survive, but in Jack Frost, it's heavily implied that what happened. So,
I'm gonna keep a tab open for that. That's interesting. So he uses the archetypes as like a central theme.
Yeah, the central theme of Vacuum Flowers is like personality, and the idea is that in that novel in the future, people can be like easily reprogrammed. For example, people don't have to go to universities to study. If you want to become a doctor, you just get reprogrammed with all the knowledge you need, and now you can be a doctor. Don't want to be a doctor anymore. Want to be welder. You can be reprogrammed with knowledge needed to be a welder. So, and not only just information can be transferred this way, but personality traits. So, if for example, if you're shy but you want to be like this macho thundercock, you can reprogram yourself with those personality traits, and you can do it like as often as you want. So you can be a different person every day, pretty much, if you want to. And people would, it's like nowadays fashion is about what you wear, but in that future, personality traits become part of fashion. So you want to at some point some personality trait becomes fashionable, so a lot of people start acting this way because it's easy to become that's one of the ideas. It's, as I said, this writer is really interesting, has really interesting ideas.
Yeah, just on the Wikipedia plot summary for Vacuum Flowers, they're like, the protagonist is Rebel Elizabeth Mudlark, the recorded personality of a dead woman, which has become the property of a corporation that intends to sell it as entertainment. Like, that's a really, most people, like, the protagonist is a person, right? just at that first step, they've already kind of packed a lot of really intriguing things in there.
Yeah, that's the thing, because there are technically two protagonists. They just share the same body, and because of in the very beginning, the one of the protagonists is the one who died right like as the novel starts, and another protagonist, well, she works as a tester of those programmable personalities, and when she's programmed with this one to test what this personality is like, she decides that she likes it more than her actual self and decides to become it. So she pours water on the this device used to program, but because she didn't disconnect the wire harness on her head, it zaps her, so she's like in this state where, oh, she gets brain, we call it brain damage, but she's stuck with two personalities that are switching between each other at random times, and shenanigans ensue after that.
Yeah, it sounds like it would be an interesting way to explore the continuity of diachronic identity. Like, would the updated version of you still be quote-unquote you, and so on?
Yeah.
I say yes. Just throwing it out there. I'm in team yes. I'm in team materialist. I'm in team yeah. It's a thing. Therefore yes. There's nothing illegitimate about that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know why people struggle with that so much.
Well, the struggle, for example, how much of your personality is learned and how much is rooted in biology, because, well, let's not forget that the idea that people are blank slates is really outdated and unscientific, because the best way to show how unscientific it is just a study of twins that were separated at birth, so their environment is radically different, but
Yeah.
they share the same genetics. You can see how similar they grow up to be. So, and a lot of personality traits they carry over, even if they were brought up very differently.
Oh, well, do you know what happens in twin studies on the heritability of political views? If you remove, using statistical methods, if you remove heredity from the equation, then the parent-child correlation in political beliefs actually becomes negative. So, in other words, the degree to which children resemble their parents politically is driven completely by genes and, I guess, developmental luck. Yeah, it's cool.
And,
Yeah, but barring genes, it would just like flip every time. It would just like flip every
Yes,
generation.
yes, yeah.
So like also, well, the idea that I know it's for the story, but I don't think that it would be possible to radically reroute the brain, just reprogram it to have a radically different personality. Well, maybe just to import knowledge, it would be one thing, but to alter the basics of how people act, that's I don't think you can do it without causing a major chaos in the neural pathways, and it wouldn't be easily reversible, because each time, unless this reprogramming actually involves many months of being in a coma while the brain is physically changing its structure to match the new program, which
like metamorphosis, kind of.
yeah.
And that's interesting, because we know that real programmable biological change like that is possible. If you looked at caterpillars and butterflies, you would never imagine that they were the same species, and it's possible that we could engineer a situation where the stuff that trans people want to do now to make themselves the other sex is very crude from a biological point of view. It's just effectively a paint job compared with what could be done at a deeper level, I guess, if we had the right. Maybe in the future, if we had the technology, we could basically get people to metamorphose like that, and you could literally become a woman, having formerly been a man, and so on. And maybe it would still be you, quote unquote, because butterflies can still remember some behaviors that they engaged in as caterpillars. So on the identity question, it's interesting, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
Bloody
it's-
Bush says genetic re-engineering. That's what it would be. I mean, you can kind of say that that's sort of what's happening with the hormone replacement theory or therapy. Sorry, but even that is kind of like you're just kind of like steadily introducing that. Like it'd be much more fundamental if like your body was actually just like
Well,
geared to naturally be producing the right hormones.
the thing that's so trippy about this is that there actually is a species, and there must be more than one. It's some weird evolved strategy. There'll be a name for it, but there's a
Oh.
species of fish that the females, if they live beyond a certain age, and I think it's if they've already reproduced a certain number of times, they hide in like some little cavern somewhere in the ocean, and then they like a cocoon essentially, and they become males. Uh, yeah, it's really cool.
So
Yeah,
there you go.
there's
We
also-
just gotta take some of those genes and just splice them in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, what could possibly go wrong, right?
What could go wrong? Yes, fuck it. Let's try spin the wheel. Who cares?
There's also the one species of frogs that can do that.
Yeah.
And no gay chemicals in the water don't do that to them.
Well, I was just
No,
gonna
the-
say though, if it, with the right chemicals in the water, it's all the frogs, right?
No, that's the thing. This study that prompted the water filter merchant to go on this gay chemical frog in the water. Yeah, this study was really dubious because Miles Power did a video about this, showing how dubious this study is, and this was not confirmed by any follow-up studies, and the guy himself who did it, he kind of seems really sketchy. So it's not very scientific.
I
And
just
this-
realized that on the last page when she starts talking about the other and feminization and being related to other things, that counts as dualism bad. That counts as dualism bad. I'm gonna go ahead and put a hashtag on that. Bam. All right, we got onto a big sci-fi tangent, which is good stuff. Got a couple of tabs open to look into later on, but let's keep on keeping on because there's like 5 or 6 pages left, and yeah, we'll see what else happens in here.
I'm gonna have to go to bed in about half an hour, just to let you know.
Oh, okay. So then I guess for this next section here. All right, she says,
Yep,
as
yep.
Gertrude Stein, writing in 1937, warned, there is too much fathering going on just now, and there is no doubt about it, fathers are depressing. Everybody nowadays is a father. There is a Father Mussolini, and Father Hitler, and Father Roosevelt, and Father Stalin. And there are ever so many more ready to be one. Again, it seems incredible that Bly can gaze upon a world dominated by father figures, Father Bush, Father Schwarzkopf, Father Turner, Father Yesen, Jehovah, Allah, God the Father, and John Paul, too. And see an absent father. Of course, Bly... She's literally
Sorry.
saying, because we have male leaders, like, isn't that father enough? Isn't that good enough? Oh, you want an actual father? You want a father that's around and, like, plays kickball with you and tucks you in at night or whatever? Well, fuck you. Fuck you, because the president has a dick. Like...
And some of the other names in there, isn't Schwarzkopf like a shampoo brand? I mean, I know it's something else as well, probably, but yeah, I just thought it was really funny.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure. I'm not sure what that is yet. Schwarzkorp.
it means blackhead.
Huh.
Nice.
Great name for a shampoo, right? Of course, Bly and other men's movement leaders would contend that many military and political leaders are not true fathers, but shadow fathers or poisoned kings. This is tantamount to denying the culpability of the Church for the Inquisition by arguing that those who implemented it were not true Christians. Bly's argument is riddled with riddled further with doublethink, because the archetypes of and routes to masculinity that he explicitly prescribes can lead only to this type of poisoned father. Ooh, this is interesting. So she is invoking the negative aspect of the king here. And her claim is that through what Bly promotes, every single father is going to be these poisoned males. But it's interesting here that we have a feminist employing or referencing the no true Scotsman fallacy. That's kind of interesting. Usually they're the ones always committing it and being accused of it. And look at how things have reversed when we go back in time. All right, let's see if she can.
Schwarzkopf means there are several mountains that have this name, and a bunch of people whose last name is Schwarzkopf. So there's that.
Well, and presumably at least one of those people is some awful poisoned king patriarch.
Yeah.
Such that he made her little short list here.
German names in general are funny, like Zuckerberg, Mark Sugar Mountain. Yeah.
You know what? That's really funny, because I'm sure you could take like any kind of like benevolent or even just mundane thing in German, but then like make it a German name, and people would just like pretend like, oh yeah, that guy was awful.
Yeah.
Like whatever the German term for like wool mittens, I'll just like pretend that they were some like awful dictator and just see how many people go along with it.
Yeah, I wonder if it's just because of the legacy of the Third Reich. It's like the Hitlerizing syndrome, you could call it. That there's been a Hitlerizing of the German language because people just associated with him.
Well, and that was something that I remember years ago. I was listening to a little bit of Kraut before he completely lost his fucking mind. And he mentioned how he feels so bad for the Germans, of how they're constantly just like really sorry and apologizing, and how it's really ridiculous. And I thought like, wow, like I never thought of it in that light, but it makes a lot of sense. And then I don't know, I guess I wonder what happened to that to that sentiment in him.
Well, I don't, to be honest, he was probably always dysfunctional in some way, but yeah, that whole fiasco was just beyond cringe. And I think he's still losing subscribers. He's come back to making videos, and he made a video about Russia allegedly legalizing wife beating, which of course is not actually what happened.
That's just like when people say, oh, well, since they only made marital rape illegal recently, that means it was legal to rape your wife. Like, I'm sure it's like the same kind of fucking logic.
Yeah.
Well, I've seen his video where he justified the firebombing of Dresden. And his justification was so bad that one of the points he made is like, "Oh, do you think that Nazis wouldn't do the same? If you are starting with Nazis would do the same, it's not a very good justification."
Yeah, right. But the Nazis would have done it. Like, come on.
Yeah, that's exactly the point.
YouTube is the real clown world.
Honk honk.
All right, let's see what her smoking gun evidence is against Bly, and how his approach to masculinity will always lead to the poisoned king. For example, we must question Bly's use of a fairy tale as a source of positive gender roles. Okay, stop, bitch. Remember 3 pages back when she was talking about her cultural analysis based entirely on fucking sitcoms and movies? I just rewind a little bit.
Yeah, how in the modern day this has become much more insane. Like the Big Bang Theory supposedly represents the subjection of women, even though it's about a bunch of guys with multiple PhDs and God knows fucking what, who live adjacent to a completely useless, completely unremarkable woman, and they're all lucky to have her, is the narrative that the show presents. But this is about how women have it worse, according to some people.
But by the way, the thing is that using examples from fiction to illustrate a point isn't necessarily bad. Like, for example, that's how fables work. There's a fictional story with a moral teaching at the end. So that's just because the story is fictional doesn't mean that the teaching should be ignored. That's just that the story is just a vessel to deliver the moral.
Yeah, well, and it's this classic thing where feminists think that like advertising and marketing defines our behavior when really it's more like a mirror to what people already want. And I think that these like fables and folk stories are kind of the same way. You have these
That's
cultures that work in certain ways, and then you make these stories just to kind of encapsulate the morals and to deliver it quickly.
I don't know if it's just my autism that's always so amazed by these kinds of things, but it's like the idea that advertising changes people's behavior is a huge claim. Like it shouldn't be something that you could just say, but it's just like everybody just assumes that it's true without a shred of evidence and construct elaborate theories based upon it.
Yeah, they put a lot of weight into that, and then lo and behold, a lot of things crumble because it seems like it's not only like not accurate. It's almost like I was gonna say the opposite of true, but I don't even know if that's necessarily the case. It seems like it's just kind of irrelevant, at least in terms of like changing people's behavior. It just reminds you of if you already wanted. Okay, so then she says feminists for decades have been pointing out the all too grim meaning of many of these stories for women. As Andrea Dworkin observed, there we go. As Andrea, here we go. We're gonna cite Andrea fucking Dworkin. As Andrea Dworkin observed, in these tales, women are either passive lumps of beauty, hence good, or active and powerful, hence malevolent and often ugly witches. In Iron John, the boy becomes a man by slaying the enemy in battle and marrying a princess, neatly fulfilling patriarchal roles and expectations. The princess, of course, is obsessed with the prince, the original pretty woman who loves too much, and, like a piece of property, is passed from father to husband. There is no challenge to male dominance or traditional gender roles here. Bly overtly denies a desire to reconstitute the patriarchy, yet his glorification of rapist divinities and sexist fairy tales belies that statement. Congruent with this is his recurrent use of soft as the primary descriptive of failed masculinity. All power resides with the fraternity of the hard on Captain Bly's ship of Snools. When ironclad men shout ho,
Sorry, I have
savvy
to
women
say
sigh ho ho hum. Haven't we all heard this before?
that what was that? The fraternity of the hard. That really sounds like the title of a gay porn film.
Oh, I'm sure it is. Yeah. The Fraternity of the Heart on Captain Bly's Ship of Snools. And Ship of Snools has a footnote. This is footnote number 11. Let's see what she has to say. Footnote 11 is... Snool is a word pirated from ordinary dictionaries by Mary Daly in Pure Lust, Elemental Feminist Philosophy, which she redefines to name agents of the atrocities of the Sado state. Daly, with Caputi, further defines Snool in The Wikidary as normal inhabitant of Sado society characterized by sadism and masochism combined, stereotypic hero and or saint of the Sado state. Well, that's a fun term, the Sado state. When when BDSM truly become one, you create the Sado state. Bly's endorsement of sexual inequality. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to switch the page. Switch to the next page. Bam. But yeah, that's... So yeah, we've got Daly and Dworkin mentioned in here, as well as Gertrude Stein, which... I don't remember anything that Gertrude Stein has really said. But the name is like everywhere. Bly's endorsement of sexual inequality also is revealed in his constant admonishment that even the best-intentioned women cannot give the questioning man what is needed. What is required, it seems, is a kind of psychic semen. When a father and a son spend long hours together, we could say that a substance almost like food passes from the older body to the younger. A physical exchange takes place. The younger body learns at what frequency the masculine body vibrates. End quote. So that was a Bly quote. This sounds frighteningly like psychic and or physical incest, and evinces both pedophilia and a characteristic patriarchal phenomenon, homophobic homoeroticism. Okay, we need to take a step back here. So, like, she's read this incestual, pedophilic homophobia and homosexuality into this thing, and then said, wow, look at that patriarchal homoerotic homophobia. Like, did I just make that up? I'm going to read this quote one more time. When a father and a son spend long hours together, we could say that a substance almost like food passes from the older body to the younger. A physical exchange takes place. The younger body learns at what frequency the masculine body vibrates. I mean, I can see how, like, if you're a 12-year-old, you know, like, you're not taking it seriously, you might go, what part of the body's vibrating, blah, 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 right? But, like, she's supposed to be an academic. She's supposed to be reading this in a charitable way and trying to figure out what it is that he's saying. And clearly, the argument is that there's this physical proximity, right? And that there's something that's shared in that kind of an experience. You know, and he is talking about something intimate, which is that, you know, like parents are close to their children, like they should be. And I don't know, this just strikes me as really juvenile and like really, really uncharitable. I'm just struck by this. Like, anyway, so she reads homophobic homoeroticism into that, which, by the way, I could put my little hashtag on the homophobia one. I'm sure that if someone's playing with a different bingo card, like, they have to have a bingo by now. It's so close. We're almost at a blackout. I wonder if the gender pay gap will come up. Okay. This dynamic easily is recognizable in the patterns of traditional fraternal organizations, such as organized sports, college fraternities, the military, and the Catholic clergy. Such brotherhoods vehemently taboo liberating erotic expression between men, but at the same time profoundly encourage contempt for the female and worship of the male, and engage in all sorts of homophobic/homosexual ritual, like the spanking games of college fraternities, the sexual byplay of football language and gesture, and the sadomasochistic and erotically charged hierarchies of the military and the church. These all-male institutions are the true model for the separatist men's movement, and long have functioned as a breeding ground of patriarchal attitudes and values, allowing older men to pass their prejudices on to younger men, and the chief setting for rites of masculine initiation, which frequently entails sexual abuse of women and or younger men. So resistant are these groups to integration of the sexes that one member of the Yale Skull and Bone Society recently threatened that there would be a rash of date rape in the medium-term future if women insisted upon joining that organization. Such rapism is the true face of the Zeus energy that Bly so blithely extols.
The phrase rapism is fantastic.
Rapism. Yeah, she's got a lot of like fun little terms here that I'm gonna definitely appropriate. But I wonder though if this quote here, I wonder if what they're actually saying is that this shouldn't have women in it because it's gonna lead to like men and women in a co-ed situation drinking heavily and like sharing a lot of space that's going to lead to date rape. Like, I wonder if it came out of like genuine concern for women, and now she's saying, "Oh, this is a rape threat."
Aren't these the same people who gradually, did everything that they could to destroy male spaces, basically, like exclusive male spaces?
Yeah, I mean it's because the notion, remember we opened with the very notion that men and women are different is anti-equality, right?
Right.
So yeah, of course we're asking the wrong questions here.
And the
Uh,
whole, the
I'm
whole,
listening. I'm just gonna be AFK for a minute here.
okay, the whole homoerotic homophobia thing, or however she said it, just interesting thing to note. So I had a friend in real life that I was kind of, I guess, physically affectionate towards. We were just platonic friends, but like I was kind of touchy and I hugged him a lot and all this kind of stuff. And the thing is that he was never bothered by it, or he wasn't threatened by it as long as he was between girlfriends. But then when he had a girlfriend, then suddenly this was a no-no, and it became a really big deal. So it's just interesting. They always discount, they always talk about men as if they exist in a vacuum, as opposed to being influenced by, women's mate preferences, say, or anything like this.
Oh, hello.
He's busy doing something.
Oh. So I just came back. So
Oh, right.
I missed what happened. So I just heard that there was a sudden pause. I thought there was like a disconnect or something.
Yeah, I'm here now. I just had to.
Yeah, did you hear my piece?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Although when I stepped out, I had a little bit of trouble hearing. But yeah, it's about like expressions of affection between two males that like women will often view it as like a homosexual thing when it's like if you control for the genders like to two girls like that would be like a normal kind of a
Yeah.
thing, right? Oh, I have the wrong jack here. Okay. Well, that's the thing too is that cultures that where like homosexuality isn't really accepted, it's actually more common to see two men like hold hands or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like that's kind of a weird paradox there, but it makes perfect sense.
Well, the the way some people resolve it, and I talked to you about this, Eric Anderson's bromance theories and stuff, which I actually, I'm quite fond of. I think he's pretty cool from what I've seen of him. But yeah, there's this whole thing about how, yeah, sorry. Originally, we didn't have the concept of homosexual identity, like the idea of gayness as an aspect of personal identity. It was just sort of a behavior that some people engaged in. So before that came onto the scene, historically, these kinds of affectionate things, they wouldn't be read as homosexual. They wouldn't be sort of automatically associated with that. So that's why you would see more of that kind of thing. And then once homosexual identity was, I guess, concretized in the sort of early 20th century, that's when those sorts of behaviors started to disappear.
Yeah, and it makes perfect sense. It's kind of like when you attach an entire freaking identity to it, then people are like, I'm gonna keep further away.
Yeah.
Like a big package deal. Let's see. Oh yeah, I'm at the end of this little page here. So it is important to distinguish between the separatism, sometimes temporary, of oppressed groups and the entrenched separatism of many elite patriarchal groups. Simply put, when women and other oppressed groups structure their organizations and lifestyles according to separatist principles, it is usually a survival technique employed because the power elites invariably treat us as inferiors, victimizing us even to the point of killing us, thwarting our efforts for political change, and in general rendering life ugly, snoolish, and boring. When men structure their organizations and lifestyles according to separatist principles, it is due to traditional elitist exclusionary tactics, serving to consolidate male power and to institutionalize fear and loathing of the other. as Julia Sugarbaker, aka Dixie Carter, acidly observed on a 1991 episode of Designing Women that lampooned the separatism of the men's movement. Such wild men deem women to be the impure ones who would pollute the men's sacred circle. And there we have, but women have it worse. So that is,
Yeah.
feminism is literally just women surviving and nothing more. And men are just trying to scare women. That's the whole point. Robert Bly is just trying to scare women.
How many boxes do you have ticked now? I think I have 5.
I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 7 ticked.
Right.
I ticked just express yourself, toxic masculinity, deconstructing masculinity, dualism bad, homophobia, rape, and women have it worse.
Yeah, I missed out just express yourself and rape. Yeah, I've got everything now.
Yeah, I'm not sure if gender pay gap shows up, then I got a bingo. I have one called Warrior is Scary, but she took an unexpected turn here. She went with King is Poison. So maybe I should add a box for each of the archetypes. I don't recall any of these writers criticizing Magician or criticizing Lover, but they don't like King and they don't like Warrior.
Well, maybe they're anarchists or something.
Mm-hmm. Well, they are hashtag not my anarchist. They are hashtag not my anarchist. I'm serious. For all the bitching these people do about cultural appropriation, like, can we talk about the communists appropriating anarchy from anarchists? Like, that's some bullshit. I'll hear sweet fuck all about their oppression narratives and their appropriation and all their shit until they get off on my label. Okay. This next section is called Separating from the Mother, or I used to love her, but I had to kill her. Ooh, there's a footnote. Footnote 14. Let's see what happens. Let's see who's one of her friends. Oh, it's a Guns N' Roses reference. Did you guys catch that that was a Guns N' Roses reference? I don't listen to Guns N' Roses. I only listen to weed music. No, we're all weebs in here. All right.
Yeah.
Good. Along with that questionable juicy bonding with the father, along with that questionable juicy bonding, like she's enjoying that a little too much. I think she's read that a lot of times. I think she's writing a fan fiction.
You know, it's like you know how what they say. You know, this incest is a good old family fun.
I think that's the angle that she's going for. I think she would come back to it in this way.
Well, you know, women abuse children just as much as men do. So.
But that's different. That's different. Terrence got the reference.
By the way,
good.
I was just thinking. The stuff that you were saying earlier about, you sounded like you were unsure on it. I was just curious about there basically being gender parity in the perpetration of rape. Isn't there data on that? Like, the overwhelming majority of men who say that they were assaulted, the perpetrator was female?
Yeah, so what it's based on is the National Crime and Victimization Survey, because it was one of the only times where they actually measured men who were forced to penetrate women. And they don't count those as rape when they count up everything, but if you look at their tables and then you go back and include the men forced to penetrate as rape, then you end up with gender parity. So that's where the claim in men's rights circles comes from, that there's gender parity in rape. So it's based on a survey. That's important to realize. It's based on a survey. So it's not that strong of evidence, but also, if you go further back... Sorry,
I was just going to say, it would be strong enough to meet feminist standards if they were trying to show the opposite.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But then the other thing, too, is that Mary Koss, who, like, her methods are the ones that basically define how all of these things have been done. And like she was paid by the government to go and do her research on rape, and she deliberately used a different standard for counting rape when it came to men versus women. And she was asked about it, and she basically said, well, that's ridiculous. She said, it's ridiculous for us to consider that it should be the same standard for men and for women. And when you take a step back and realize that, like, if you were to, like in light of this recent evidence, to me, it's inferred that as she was going over this evidence, she realized that had she used the same standard, then she would have had gender parity, and it doesn't fit her narrative. So I'm speculating on that, but I don't know. To me, the shoe fits. That or women are just like a lot rapier now than they used to be.
No, it's probably nothing new. It's just well, again, it's like if you want the certain result, just change the methodology to give you the needed result. It's how pseudoscience always works.
Yeah.
If you just definition and use double standards and ignore this and over exaggerate that, it's how you if you cannot make the puzzle pieces to fit, just take a pair of scissors and a sharp knife, and the puzzle pieces will fit eventually.
Well, and the other
And the
thing
thing
too is
about
people say like, "Oh, well, men clearly aren't victimized as much," but like, men aren't victimized as much. Period. Like, men are just generally more resilient, and that's why it actually makes sense to figure they probably endure even more of these kinds of things silently.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say that even with the problems, and I know this is a criticism that some people have made, selectively, of course, it's not a consistent criticism, but that's what most people are like. Um, the problems with self-report in general, but even then, you would think men have more of an incentive to not report these kinds of things. So
Yeah, well, like there's it runs both ways. There's a disincentive in that like he could be kind of like made fun of or whatever, but then there's also just a lack of any incentive because what kind of help is he even gonna get?
yeah, that as well. So
And I feel like most of them they would just sit down like with a counselor or whatever, and they'd say, "So like, how do you feel?" And he'd be like, "Well, I don't know. I guess it's behind me. I guess I'm kind of over it." And then they'd be like, "Okay, well, why are you here then?" Right?
and
I think that's just how it would go down. Like,
a good kind of card you can pull now, especially now, in response to the people who minimize the issue by saying, "Oh well, men aren't victimized as much," and what they mean by that is that men don't weep as much about it for as long afterwards. It doesn't seem to permanently traumatize them in the way that it allegedly does to women. The thing is, the great majority of people who were molested as children, we had a conversation about this. Most people who experienced that kind of abuse recover with very little psychological damage. So if they're gonna minimize this issue by saying that men aren't victimized as much, by which they mean there's no long-term trauma, um, it will be interesting to see if they're prepared to apply that standard consistently. To which the answer is obviously no.
well, and the thing is too is in light of that evidence, like I feel like the normal response is, "Hey, if that's true, that's great news." Right? Like that means there's a hope. That means that like people can heal. But for some reason it seems like most people if they hear that, they're like they have this like weird reaction where they're like, "No, no. Like it has to be true that it's the worst thing ever." Right? It has to be true that like people are scarred for life and completely broken. Like they need to be
Yeah,
these victims for me. Like
it's a really weird fetish of the 20th century and the 21st century. I'm wondering if maybe it literally did just originate with psychiatry, with the the emergence of psychiatry as I was gonna say a pseudo-scientific discipline. I mean, I think a lot of it is that, to be
that's
honest.
a
But
little harsh, but not totally
let
inaccurate.
let's just say uh, an institution with a huge amount of perceived epistemic authority. and then these sorts of things started to become more common. Yeah, it's interesting new territory for civilization.
I mean, I guess I'm okay with people like assuming that there's an effect. When agnostic, I kind of feel like erring on the side of like this is hurting people is kind of the empathetic way to go. But at the same time, if it's ultimately not going to be helping people, then it's kind of not. It's like my favorite Christina Hoff Sommers quote is truth is no truth is no enemy to compassion, and falsehood is no friend.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love that. That's how she opens her chapter on rape.
I was just saying that if they're going to make the case that rape isn't as morally bad when it's done to men because men are resilient, well, they're going to have to. They aren't going to apply that standard in a consistent way, because that would have implications that would horrify them. So it's a stupid argument.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm back, by the way.
Hey, welcome back.
Yeah,
Oh.
I couldn't listen for a while because my phone was barely charged when I went to lie down, so it died after a second. But here I am.
Yeah,
I just drank a massive amount of kratom powder. My back has been, I mean, it's doing well, but I last night was like really driving the lacrosse ball into it, and there was like a breakthrough, like snap moment, and now it's very sore from that. But it was an accomplishment. It will get better. So anyhow,
good. You're on a new plateau.
yeah. Well, there's a number of little breakthroughs that have to happen in the right side of my back. The left side's pretty good.
All right. Well, lots. We've covered a little bit of ground here. We got let's see. 1, 2, 3. About 3 pages left. About three to 4 pages left here. And yeah, as you can see on the bingo sheet, if you're looking at the YouTube, you can see the bingo sheet. I have a bingo almost 3 different ways. So if she mentions the warrior archetype being scary, that's a bingo. If she talks about how feminism is actually helping too, then that's a bingo. That's probably the most likely one. And also gender pay gap will get us a bingo. So, yeah. Let's see. So right now, she was supposed to have built up an argument that said that Robert Bly's approach to masculinity will inevitably lead to what she calls the poisoned king. I don't know. Glebs, Ashley, do either of you guys feel like she built that argument?
Well, can you reiterate what she means by the poisoned king?
She didn't really explain. She just means a patriarch, but bad, which is redundant in her worldview. I'm not sure she has a conception of what a good king is.
Yeah, that's probably the problem.
She got distracted by this notion of psychic semen, which she claimed was like this incestuous, homoerotic, homophobic thing that she totally reads into the quote because she's a fucking 12-year-old. And like I don't know how that was supposed to. Yeah, I guess I'm just a little bamboozled.
She certainly seems to have a galaxy brain.
Definitely.
Do you think this, I mean, she was writing in the 1990s and she was a feminist, so she's probably relatively Marxist, and so maybe she just thinks that any king or any great leader is inherently bad because everybody should just be cooperative and there shouldn't be a need for a government or something?
Well, so she hasn't gone full Marxist, but she has done the ecofeminist dualist thing, right? Where she talks about the other and how, we epistemologically associate all of the bad things with the other. We feminize women, which is so bad. But what was the most striking to me so far was how she completely discounts the idea that fatherlessness matters. And she said, she points to all of these male leaders and says basically, isn't that enough? The president, that might have been when your phone was dead, but that just, to me, was like the most heartless and just completely bitchy. I'm just going to read that again really quick.
Yeah, who needs a father when you have George Bush,
That's literally what she's saying.
Bill Clinton.
Yeah, she says, again, it seems incredible that Bly can gaze upon a world dominated by father figures, Father Bush, Father Schwarzkopf, Father Turner, Father Yetzin, Jehovah, Allah, God the Father, and John Paul II, and see an absent father.
God. And she's like, now, I know there's big brother, little brother mentor programs, but those are a little bit patriarchal, so we're trying to get rid of those. And
Yeah, she
like,
she depicted it as basically the young male and older male colluding in order to terrorize women and black people.
wait, I just made that up, but
No, that's literally in here.
oh god.
Yeah, she's a fucking cartoon. That's why I don't feel bad, like, just being mean to any of the women who were in this book. They should all apologize. They should pay me reparations. I'm making
Aren't at least aren't some of them dead at this point? I mean, I don't know.
Well, I'm not gonna wish death upon any of them, and I'm
No,
definitely
no,
not
no.
crossing any fingers. Definitely
No.
Well,
not.
maybe
just
their children will have to pay, not the children, but the feminist proteges that
I
are
was gonna
still
say, yeah,
alive.
like you think they're having children? I don't know. Like they.
Yeah, the children that they raised with feminist influence by way of education.
They,
Those
Yeah,
they,
those-
they might have had some extra late abortions that managed to survive.
You can't wish death on them, but you can at least wish that they didn't reproduce for two reasons. One, because we don't need any more of them, and two, because these people shouldn't be allowed anywhere near children, especially not male children.
The
Yeah.
problem is, if we were gonna have justice, they need to just not only not reproduce, but they need to like unproduce. We need like the
So-
negative form of an abortion.
Well, just put them all on like a desert island and do a battle royale.
Yeah, well, we'll just as long as there's no men there, they shouldn't have anything to complain about, right? Nothing will be oppressing them.
Just
Yeah,
let
and this has been done actually. There have been TV shows that have, they put some women on an island, like in an isolated space alone, with a few resources, and do the same thing with the men.
Oh yeah, Survivor. There
Yeah.
was the famous Battle of the Sexes Survivor series.
Yeah, and it turns out, that they don't have to deal with the intolerable nuisance of ever having to be around men. That they don't have that issue, and things go just absolutely wonderfully for them. Isn't that right?
Here's the thing though, it was a little bit too real for me because when all the women were like traveling through the woods to look for supplies and they like were running in circles and like wasted days to end up on the same place they started at, I was just like, this is too real. Like I'm too much like them. This like really scares me. And then like later on in the season, they trade one man and one woman, and like the women just totally abuse the man and turn him into a total workhorse and just fucking nag him to death. Like I'm sure he's sitting here like, man, I was surviving just fine. Like the sun and the bugs and the having to get my own food and shit, like that was all fine. But just like the amount of nagging in nature, that's what he'll succumb to.
The first time, when the guy first shows up, he's like, because the guys have actually been doing something productive and, building things and so on. So he gets there and he's like, oh, where's your this? And they're like, oh, we didn't do that. Where's your food? Oh, we ran out of that. Where's this? Where's that? And then he has to go and do all of those things for them. And it's, yeah.
Well, and then the girl, right, with all the men, she's like, I can braid your hair. And they're like, oh, okay, bitch. Like, just be pretty, sit in the shade, knit some flower crowns. It's fine. It's whatever.
The thing is, that the first criticism that I can imagine some people making that, it's not a well-controlled experiment and all that, or they could have deliberately picked highly competent men and highly stupid women, but they weren't, as far as I'm aware. They were basically just randos, and if anything, you would expect the bias to run the other way on modern TV. You'd
Yeah.
expect, to
They
pick.
try to. Sorry.
Yeah, because do you think that's the episode they wanted? Do you think they wanted it to make men look really competent and women incompetent? No, like if they could have achieved the opposite, then like that would have been like a gold mine for them to have all of the men just be a bunch of crying, impotent millennial man babies, whereas all these like GI Janes are just like dominating.
Wouldn't
Like
it be
that would
awesome?
have, yeah,
Wouldn't it be awesome if somebody made a feminist adaptation of Lord of the Flies?
that would be good.
It would
I
be
mean,
hilarious, I guess.
I would want to do it, and then it wouldn't be a feminist adaptation anymore. But maybe I could write under a female pen name, and
This is why all of the Me Too women also who are worried about sexual harassment and so on. Women can do everything men can do, right? That's not an issue. So they can just go and build their own companies and their own all-female companies, and they'll be really successful, and they'll never have to have the unbearable nuisance of being around men again ever. Like they could just do it, and it would just be wonderful, right? Sorry,
oh,
I'm being.
don't worry, they have it covered. They already know what they say back to that.
Bloody Bush says Lady of the Flies, and yeah, it's obvious, but it's a great title because it tells people exactly what to expect. Actually,
Yeah.
Prince, I might employ your services when I get around to making some kind of an outline slash draft. So just some kind of sizable chunk of the novella I've been planning for a few years.
Oh,
But
a novella.
a novella. It's gonna be I want it to be 90 pages.
Okay.
That's what I'm going for. I want it to be kind of like Ayn Rand has Anthem. This is my anthem.
Okay. Well, you know what would be a good way to start? We could do a hangout feedback slash brainstorming advice for how to actually embark on such a piece of writing.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of ideas in my head. It's just I haven't. I really love it and cherish it as a brain project. So I've just been kind of like nursing my little fetus, just like for fun. So that's part of the reason that I haven't really been motivated to like make it actually exist. Is because like I'm fond of the fetus.
Yeah, well, we can play with the fetus a little bit together, and then you can pay me a little bit because you make money.
Yeah, I've been paying off my credit card debt because I've been like living on credit cards for the last few years, but I'm almost done with that. And then once I'm done with that, I'm gonna have fucking money everywhere.
Oh,
Anyway,
cool. I might actually get a roommate, and she went to Evergreen College, and she is. I looked at her Facebook. She's friends with my good friend, who's a woman who isn't a feminist, that I actually hang out with in person, and she doesn't look overtly feminist. Like she doesn't have any, photos about I believe Christine Blasey Ford or anything like that. And honestly, I really need the money, so I'm just gonna be like ask my friend to tell her that I'm about the most, I don't know, nice. I'm a good guy. I'm fair. I'm easy to get along with, but you have to accept that I have certain views about certain things and very open to talking about it. So yeah, that's my new. And I'm also gonna walk dogs for cash.
I just disclosed to everyone within 10 minutes of meeting them that I'm not 100% sure Sandy Hook happened. And then if they distance themselves, then that just does the work for me. If they stick around, like, okay, that's kind of weird, but then I'm like, okay, good. Like,
Yeah, it's a good filter.
it's
Yeah.
a great filter. It's fucking awesome. All right, let's trudge a little bit further into this because we are kind of in the end zone here. And it's gotten crazier and crazier the further we've gotten into it. This one's actually pretty entertaining. So this title was Separating from the Mother, or I Used to Love Her, but I Had to Kill Her. Along with the questionable juicy bonding with the father, Bly demands that the son commit psychic matricide. In his words, it is crucial that boys make a clean break from the original focus of their love, the mother. It's kill or be killed, as Bly spells it out. For when women, even women, with the best intentions bring up a boy, alone, he may in some way have no male face, or he may have no face at all, unquote. Here, Bly clearly aligns himself with the legions of mother haters and mother blamers who have swelled the ranks of masculine authorities for centuries. So that's just that middle paragraph there under that subtitle, and damn, I just think that escalated really quickly, right? You have Robert Bly just suggesting, hey, if you're raised by a single mother and you're a boy, like you probably didn't have any kind of like masculine role model to develop this like part of who you are, right? And she is like, oh, so basically you want to kill your mother. Like I don't know. Am I reading too much into that? I think that's kind of fucking insane. Like, a little bit defensive. I wonder if this woman is a single mother. I'm not going to look it up right now, but it does make me wonder. Like, it seems bizarre to me that people view single motherhood as this, like, sacred thing to defend in society and to make excuses for, rather than, like a non-ideal circumstance. Like, if you talk to anyone who's a single mother who's, like at least a remotely reasonable person, she'll say, like, yeah, of course, ideally, I wouldn't want to be a single mother. Like, of course, like, with hindsight 2020, I'd plan things a bit differently. You know? Like, I feel like that's a very reasonable take on things, but it seems like, I don't know, it seems like there's, like, a bizarre level of, like, feeling threatened by any sort of an examination of that.
Yeah, well, in the political mainstream, it's all some people talk about how brave and amazing single mothers are.
Yeah, they got mothers cards for Father's Day, right? Because if you're a single mother, you can have a Mother's Day card, and then a few months later get a Father's Day card also.
Yeah.
Because you're literally two people. You're literally 200% of a human being when you're a single parent. It turns out
it's just cringe, basically.
Well, and I feel like socially what it is it's like people just kind of look at a lot of these women and are like, she's crazy, let's just let her have her delusion and like pick our battles, right? And then they just kind of like take a step back, and then the narratives just kind of get compounded in society. So maybe to this degree, I'm kind of agreeing with the author a little bit that like our attitudes and our stories and everything, like they do kind of matter. But I think that the momentum's, at least at this time, is going in the wrong direction. I don't know. A popular 1991 t-shirt reads, "Shut up, bitch." Shit, is that a Roseanne quote? Shut 'em up, bitch, go home. I want that t-shirt. A popular 1991 t-shirt reads, "Shut up, bitch," and Iron John essentially transmits that same command. Bly's call for the radical rupture from the mother signals a greater renunciation and silencing of everything female and feminine in order to keep up masculinity. A November 22nd, 1991 Oprah Winfrey show dedicated to the men's movement groveled to that movement's prejudices by restricting its audience to males. Sorry, there was a hyphen there, so that's why I read that like a potato. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
I'm not even sure if maybe it was much more so in the 90s. I don't know, because I wasn't alive in the early 90s. But the term bitch doesn't really seem gendered in that context. I can imagine a woman wearing a shirt like that.
Yeah, well, I would argue it is gendered, but it's not necessarily sex.
Well, no, I mean,
right?
a man can be a bitch, right?
Exactly, because it's referring to a gendered role.
Yeah, it's a type of behavior that's usually female, but not necessarily, I guess.
Yeah, I think that it's... I mean, we can talk about it in terms of how humans use it to describe each other, but it originates from female dogs that are mean when they have puppies because they're territorial over their puppies. So
That
a man
reminds me, people would always, I would have this argument when I was like in third grade about the definitions of swear words, and people would say, a bitch is a female dog in labor. And I'm like,
or
well,
maybe I don't know.
technically it's just a dog in labor. And they're like, well, it's a female dog in labor. I'm like, yeah, but like if a male dog were in labor, it would be a bitch also. So like, that's just redundant and stupid. And I was like trying to explain this, but like as a third grader, I was less articulate. And I feel like at that time, I understood this distinction between sex and gender, which I will maintain is a useful distinction. That's one thing. That's a rare take for people within anti-feminism and anti-SJWism. Yeah, like gender and sex are not the same thing. You can absolutely have different genders. Like I'm fine with the idea of infinite genders. That doesn't bother me. It's just it kind of becomes like a less useful and kind of weirder phrase. But since we have these different terms, gender versus sex, like fuck it, let's use them.
Hmm. I'm not gonna go that far.
But this is
I-
funny. So
I
she
just want-
mentions this. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I just want to spite all the theys. I can't stand the theys.
Yeah. Right. This is funny though. I'm gonna read this in the chat. Terrence said, "These bitches were desperate for Bly to be an ultra Paul Elam." Exactly, and that's the point I mentioned earlier. Is like they did all of this pushback, all of this demonizing of Robert Bly as a matricidal, poisoned king tyrant, right? And then it's like, okay, like you didn't like this old dude kind of hanging out with this drum, saying some poems, you know, tooting some tunes out on some some Indian flute, right? That was too much. So it's okay. You get Paul Elam. You get Bash a Violent Bitch Month. Like there you go. You know, and like after you reject Paul Elam, what are you gonna get next from them? Like what's the ultra Paul Elam? So,
Yeah, and the funny thing about Paul Elam, just sort of the sort of very cartoonish vision that she's trying to paint. He seems a better fit for that. I'm not saying that he is bad or anything, but I'm just saying he would be a better fit for it. You know, physically as well, he's very physically imposing from what I've heard of him.
Oh yeah, I've seen him in person. The thing that's really striking about him is how ludicrously tall he is.
Yeah, I looked it up. He's 203 centimeters tall, which is like 6'8", 6'9", something like that.
Yeah, those are like the most like physically interesting things about any of the like men's rights people that I saw in person when I went to ICMI 2014 is Karen and Allison are like midgets and Paul Elam is like a fucking giant. There's actually a lot of interesting people that were at that conference. Like Molyneux was there, Ramsey Paul was there, Elam, Sage Gerard. I don't know if you guys know this, but so because that international conference it had to move from Detroit to St. Clair Shores, and because of this, they were kind of like, oh, like we can figure out a way to shuttle you from the airport to St. Clair Shores. And I was like, okay, whatever. I'm just gonna show up and just like figure it out, right? So I'm sure they'll have like people hanging out with like a sign or whatever. I'll just like find it. I like didn't plan it all. Like I did an awful job. This was my first time ever traveling alone. And like I was just wandering around the airport and like I asked a couple of people like who were working like the tables, like the customer service, like, hey, do you guys know anything about the men's conference? And they're like, no, what's that? I'm like, oh, well, we're talking about men's issues. And they're like, oh, that sounds kind of interesting. And I'm like, yeah, I think so too. That's why I'm going, right? And I was just wandering around, and eventually I was like, okay, fuck it, I'm just gonna take a bus to my hotel, even though it's like super far, and like I'm gonna get lost. It's gonna be awful. And then I see Sage Gerard, and I'm like, hey, I recognize that guy. He looks familiar. And like I recognized Sage Gerard because I'd seen like his YouTube videos, and I was like, "Hey, you're Sage," and he was like, "Do I know you?" And I'm like, "No, you don't know me. I'm just a crazy person from the internet who like is going to your conference." And that's how I got my ride to my hotel.
I was gonna say about Paul Elam is like he's kind of the not grandfather, but father of the current incarnation of the men's movement. I guess like Warren Farrell would probably be the grandfather, but
And then Robert Bly would be like the great grandfather.
but it would have to be somebody as physically imposing in terms of, just they wouldn't be afraid of people trying to physically assault them all that much, to really break the ice and go public with the views that he was stating, and it's like anytime a guy actually wants to state something controversial about gender, they have to make sure that people don't try to beat them up, and it's a little bit less worrisome for Paul.
That's an interesting point. I never thought of it, that maybe that has something to do with it. See, the thing is, though, is like, since I'm kind of like gay and twinky, it kind of makes me feel more safe, because then people kind of see it as like a pussy move to beat up a faggot who's just like clearly not threatening anyone. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true, actually. Like the guys that are noticeably gay but seem a little bit more masculine or slightly more alpha than maybe you do, kind of more like me. Like we tended to get more crap in school. I remember I might have told you this story before, but it was so funny. I had this black friend last decade, and he was talking. He was gay, obviously, and he was talking about how he was like, "Man, it's hard being gay in Black America." Blah blah blah. I mean, we got messed with in school so much, and then I was all like, "Oh, unless the kid was really really nice," and he was like, "Oh, whatever. Thank you, Mr. Black Gay America." And I was like, "No, come on," because I went to school in a black neighborhood. My middle school was 80% black, and there was this one kid that was so. And then he was like, "Oh, actually, yeah, I know what you mean. Every school got a Leslie. Every school has that Leslie, and nobody's gonna pick on Leslie because they don't want to. It's like killing Bambi." And then he was like, "Except for me, I did." I was like, "Why y'all messing with me? Leslie is gay. Leslie is the gay one."
That's funny.
I was reconnected with him like 10 years later on Facebook. Like a friend suggested that we be friends. And so or maybe it was like even on MySpace. I don't remember. So I posted and maybe like a testimonial on MySpace. And I was like, "Why are y'all messing with me? Leslie is gay."
See, for me, it's not even being gay that would get me bullied in school. It's just that, like, I was a total weeb and just, like, a weird person. And, like, that's, like, way more offensive.
I was chubby.
I would have been the coolest fucking Zoomer ever. I would have been, like, the king of the Zoomers. Had I just been born, like, 5 to 10 years later, I would have been the coolest goddamn person. It's such bullshit.
I was chubby, I was loud, and I sounded approximately as gay as I do now. So it was hard to miss me in terms of sight. It was hard to not hear me. And then I attracted all this attention to myself. And then
Just James Charles level of here it comes.
Who's James Charles?
James Charles, we talked about him on our stream. He's the makeup dude. The boy on Cover Girl who had so much drama.
He'd be more of a Leslie.
He's a Leslie. He's a total Leslie. Okay, but we were actually on a really funny cliffhanger at the bottom of this page.
Okay,
So
sorry.
she references a November 22nd, 1991 Oprah Winfrey show dedicated to the men's movement groveled to the men's movement's prejudices by restricting its audience to males. Groveled to that movement's prejudices by restricting its audience to males. Then in parentheses, have women ever been so indulged? Actually, bitch, yeah. There's a really, really famous clip from 1990. It's a couple of years later. But that was the one that had Mel Feet and the PUA and the male feminist with an all-female audience. which if you haven't seen that clip, like message me. I will get you the link. If you search on YouTube, a PUA, an MRA, and a male feminist on a show or whatever, I forgot her name. Her name is like Faith something stupid. That clip is so ridiculous. Like watching that, it gives you the exact same feeling that reading Christina Hoff Sommers' Who Stole Feminism gives you. Because you read it or you look at it and it's like, this is literally today. This is literally today and nothing has changed. And it's creepy. The more time goes on, the creepier it is that it like fits so well. And Mel Feet is a fucking badass. He's like my favorite person. He's literally my spirit animal. And the host of that show was a total bitch who said that his sweater did not go with his skirt. And no, bitch, that sweater does go with that skirt. Those colors go together, the shapes go together, and he looks fine in it. So, fuck her. Thank you. I feel better now. Thank you for indulging me. But anyway, she has that little quote on the other side. Have women ever been so indulged? Yeah, it turns out they have. It turns out, had they not been so indulged, leading up to the point of this being published, they were indulged just a couple of years later. So there, bitch.
Wait, what would they theoretically have been asking for, just like as an example?
To have an all-female audience regarding men's issues.
So I don't understand.
Because the Oprah show had an all-male audience to address the men's movement. And she's like, have women ever been so indulged? And it's like, yeah, women were indulged in that way, precisely. In the 90s. And she continues, self-avowed men's movement leaders and a Santa Fe-style, long-haired drumming white man preened on the stage. Engaging in group drumming, they sought to release the beast within and encourage men in the audience to express antipathy and anger to women. One audience member was met with rousing cheers when he stated, when my TV talks too much, I can mute it. Unfortunately, I can't do that to my girlfriend. Such are the fantasies of late 20th century techno wild men.
But where's
techno wild men? That is funny. Who cares? Like,
yeah.
I mean, how many jokes are there about, like, I don't know, men leaving a stinky sock on the radiator or whatever?
It sounds like something from Married with Children.
Yeah, like, and like the thing is too is like when you have friends, like you make fun of each other and you make jokes and everything, right? And like men and women do that also. It's perfectly natural, and I feel like these feminists are just so fucking humorless that they just can't stand it. And it's like a normal woman is like she is laughing. She's laughing at that too.
Yeah, because she knows she talks a lot. I was actually just watching what was it? It's something Def Comedy Jam, like a new iteration of Def Comedy Jam last night, because I have HBO Go now because I had to get it to watch Game of Thrones, and I'm like, well, I should watch some other stuff because might as well. They have good stuff on here. And then I was like, okay, I should do some research. What is Def Comedy Jam like now? And it wasn't that bad, actually. I mean, it wasn't great. The comics weren't particularly funny, but I was really worried about it being, like anti-American black supremacist cringe or something. And the host came out and he did it. I was worried, and he confirmed my fears for a second, because he comes out and he's all like, yo, welcome to, Def Jam All-Stars or something. And he was like, now, I noticed some white people in here. Just want to let y'all know, we are not making America great up in here. Blah, 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 blah. But he didn't even say blah, 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 blah. He basically just said we're not making America great again up in here, or something like that. And then there was never a mention of politics for the rest of the half hour that I didn't watch all of the last comic because she was kind of boring to me. but everybody else was just making jokes about life. And one of the guys was he was like, what's with females who like, he's like, I smoke a lot of weed, and some women try to have a problem with the fact that I'm a stoner. Like, it's gonna say, okay, you can smoke weed, I just don't want to be around you if you're stoned. And it's like, well, I guess we're not gonna be seeing each other very often. And then people laughed a little bit, and he was like, and see, that's a really dumb thing to do to me, because I am much better when I'm stoned. I can talk to you like I'm interested. Be like, oh no, Keisha did not just say that. What'd she say again? Oh damn. And like, he was just making jokes about how it is like to be in a relationship, and everybody was laughing. Nobody was like, oh my god, how dare he? And it was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Maybe it's just because black people get to make jokes still. I don't know.
Yeah, right. But yeah, that is kind of the thing, and I wonder if part of it comes from this idea that like feminists like to read into really small cultural things or microaggressions and then turn it into the poisoned king ruling society. Like,
well, and
I think that's part of it, right? Is that they can't let anything go, because anything just is going to snowball into the worst possible thing. Everything is rape,
Well, they have a history of that. Like, there's a history of them pulling that crap. I talked about it in my book, intersectional video. Yeah, intersectional feminism as communist particle board, in which during the period when I think this started probably when the men were at war in the 40s, and the women were trying to hold down the fort with communism. They started really, really focusing on women's issues a lot, and they started writing letters to the editor all the time about things that were sexist and that type of a thing. That was a thing that they did, and obviously that never really went away. I think it just became a part of the things that women's advocates do, or maybe women are just kind of like that. I don't know. Like, or feminist.
You mean maybe she's born with it, or maybe it's feminism?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's probably what I would say is that if you've already convinced yourself that the world is ruled by all of these horribly unjust rulers that oppress you, then you see it everywhere. Obviously.
That makes sense. It looks like Ashley hopped off. I don't remember him saying bye, but I know he mentioned earlier that he was going to sleep because it was late for him. But all right, okay. So there's just a couple of pages left here. Let's see, where was I? This oh yeah. So she was talking about the Oprah show where the guy makes the joke about muting his girlfriend, and oh my god, this is so horrible. Blah blah blah. This is. She depicts this as men encouraged in the audience to express antipathy and anger to women. Just a joke about muting a woman like a TV. And that's the only example she gives. So presumably that's like the smoking gun. That's like the most egregious one. I'd be interested to see if we can find this Oprah clip from November 22nd, 1991. I'll actually look that up after the stream to see if it shows up like on YouTube.
Huh. Yeah, I've always found it really amazing. I've definitely talked about this before in Gaytriarchy, the way in which women, feminists, but maybe even women in particular, just get so infuriated at the idea that people might ignore them. Like, it's like, hey, all he's saying is that he would kind of want to, like, I mean, maybe she's pretending to read into it and pretending to think that he really wants to gag her or something. Like, I don't know what she would say, but the operative notion is like, he just kind of wants to ignore her for a while. And that's everybody's right, at any time. And it reminds me of the, non-binary females that would show up under my video, the intersection, not that one. What was the one? The one about um boycott they them pronouns, and they were all so mad that I would, say that I'm not gonna talk with you. And it's like, you're seriously thinking that that's a terrible thing? Like, do you really want to hang out with me? And they'd be like, of course not. And it's like, see, problem solved. And I guess it's different with
Well,
romantic partners and everything, but at the same time, not really. I mean, don't feminists always want women to not be around their boyfriends as much as possible? Like, whatever.
yeah, you need the girl time. You need the girl time, right? Well, and I'm a broken record on this, but I say it's because we don't take seriously the right to free association. And I know
I thought you were gonna.
people don't like that idea, but you know what? If you're against free association, it's because you're in favor of forced association. And forced association
Comes from the Civil Rights Act.
yeah, fuck the Civil Rights Act. It's garbage. Absolute garbage. Get rid of it.
I thought that you were going to talk about the pimp hand.
Well, I mean, it's kind of a form of keeping the pimp hand strong, right? But it's not even that, doesn't even need to be that severe. It's just like, I want to go walk away and then do my own thing. It's like, no, that's violence against me. It's like, it's just hysterical. Yeah. It's just nonsense. And that's like the cornerstone of the moral backbone of Western society. And like, when you actually deconstruct it, it's just like, why? Anyway. Bly's demand that the boy separate from his mother is by no means unique. This dictum pervades psychoanalytic, social learning, and sociobiological theories, and we see it propagated everywhere in popular culture, from Psycho to Home Alone. She references Home Alone again. That's 2 times for Home Alone. Currently, fearful parents can take an insufficiently masculine boy to gender clinics run by male mothers such as Richard Green, author of The Sissy Boy Syndrome. These clinics force young boys into conforming to masculine norms, inciting him to kill off anything remotely feminine or mother-like in himself, often through bizarre behavior modification techniques. Feminine behavior, such as playing with dolls, is punished, while masculine behavior, such as pulling all the hair off a female doll, is rewarded. One sissy boy actually was deemed cured after he beat his mother and sisters with a stick.
What the fuck?
This is funny. I'm sorry. That's just funny to me. I just love the idea of like this little boy like chases his sisters with the stick, just beats the crap out of him. They're like, okay, he's good. He's a good boy now. Although pulling the hair out of the dolls, I think, Prince, that kind of ties into what you mentioned earlier with how you played with Barbies, which was to make a house of horrors.
Yeah. It was after my sister thought she was too cool for Barbies.
So there you go. See, you were considerate about it. You know, she was so cool for Barbies, and you did something interesting with them. It's not like you took Barbies that she like loved and cherished and wanted to play with, and then like, you know, took their heads off and like mutilated them.
No,
yeah.
I wouldn't have done. Well, I would have gotten in a lot of trouble if I did that. Because
would you have chased her with a stick, unprovoked, just to reassert your masculinity?
No, it was always self-defense.
Yeah.
My sister was terrible.
Well, maybe had she been beaten with a stick, then she wouldn't have taken so many liberties. I don't know. I mean, it seems like so the idea is they're taken to these, they call them male mothers, but you know, did you see that there's this weird contradiction here that like these teachers that she's depicting here, they call themselves male mothers, but their goal is to remove anything feminine from these boys. That seems a little bit strange to me, right? It seems like they wouldn't identify with the term male mother if that was the case. But I don't know a whole lot about this. So I guess we'll just take her word for it. We'll be very charitable and just assume that she's 100% correct here and depicting it perfectly fairly, just like she did with the Oprah show. Other male mothers, gender theorists such as Robert Stoller and John Money, have promoted transsexual surgery as a solution to extreme femininity in boys, Such a mutilating procedure is accepted and legitimized because it supports the ingrained patriarchal belief that one's genitals and gender identity must line up according to the ironclad rule of masculine male and feminine female. Individuals who do not fulfill cultural stereotypes of sex and gender then become not only targets of violence but stigmatized as mentally ill. Ironically, all of these father figures protest too much. Each in his own way goes to extraordinary lengths to guide, bully, males into true manhood. As this very state of affairs indicates, masculinity is not something males are just born into. Rather, many males have to go through behavior modification, shock treatment, and born-again cult-type experiences in order to achieve it. Remarkably, some extremely tenacious types succeeded in resisting masculinity. The drag queens of Jenny Livingston's 1991 documentary, Paris is Burning, and surgical solutions, but then remain cultural outcasts. Implicit in the labors of male mothers Bly and Green is a hatred of the feminine and an urge to force it into its ordained place, females. Such ideology creates a climate of fear and loathing and legitimates emotional and physical violence against women and the feminine, even when the feminine is embodied by males. So, and insofar as that's the case, you know what? I'll give her a bone. I'll say that's a legitimate criticism of this men's movement. I don't think that people should be forced to change their genitals based on gendered behaviors. Also, we have violence against women on our bingo sheet. Ba-doo. That was pretty crazy, actually. I'm gonna have to look into some of these guys more to see if this is really the case with them, or if maybe she is being uncharitable. I'm not sure. I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts on this? It reminds me of the Saudi Arabia thing, right? Like
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia.
Yes, I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny how the TERFs actually have a better argument, and they were able to even come to that argumentative conclusion through feminist wackiness. It was kind of a broken clock right twice a day circumstance. And then now it's just they're like, no, that was too rational. Let's make sure that we can arrest people for pronouns.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, this is another thing. I'm really always kind of weary of this because feminists very often depict any kind of conversion therapy as being this like thing that's forced upon people against their will. What is this? I need to delete. Sorry, I'm like distracted by what's on my screen here. I don't know why the Art of Manliness article randomly showed up here, so I need to remove that.
I'm gonna be away for a second, but I'll be able to hear you.
Okay. Yeah, but because they made this big stink over conversion therapy of gay people, even though they'll do this even when it's like an adult male or female, I suppose, also. Some adult gay person that wants to pursue this kind of therapy voluntarily as a means to treat something that they don't want, I think that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly legitimate. If that's what they want to do, that should be on the table. But like feminists will depict that as like really, really evil and really awful. So I'm pretty skeptical towards how she's depicting this here. But assuming that she's depicting it somewhat more or less accurately, then I'll say, like, yeah, you found something that's, like, totally grounds for criticism, that we don't need to erase any sort of female behavior from men. I think that's a little extreme and counterproductive. At the same time, though, I wonder how she thinks she's helping solve this by completely dismissing the idea that fatherlessness in homes matters. And I wonder how many of these boys are more damaged by this sort of therapy compared to just all of the negative aspects of like single motherhood. I need to change the page here also. So we'll remove this one. And I have 3 pages left, but 2 of them are just footnotes. But the footnotes, it turns out, are very, very interesting. So this is actually the last, like, complete page. The last couple of complete pages. Okay. So, implicit in the labors of male mothers Bly and Green is a hatred of the feminine and an urge to force it into its ordained place, females. Such ideology creates a climate of fear and loathing and legitimates emotional and physical violence against women and the feminine, even when the feminine is embodied by males. From iron to irony. The many dictionary definitions of iron include inflexible, unrelenting, and harsh, as well as weaponry, and something used to bind, confine, or restrain, captivity. Bly intends Iron John to be a transformative metaphor and a model of benevolent affirmative masculinity. Nevertheless, it actually functions as a perfect metaphor for the inflexible prison of gender differences that patriarchy requires. Clearly, anatomical sexual difference exists, but having a vulva or a penis does not compel gender. That is, sex-linked traits and behaviors. Despite Time magazine's magical invocation of new studies, the question of whether or not there are innate gender differences is fundamentally a matter of ideology, not science. Bly mandates gender difference and eternal opposition between men and women. Indeed, he celebrates that rigid opposition, recoiling in horror from any flexibility or fluidity. In grand ironmonger style, he heaps scorn upon fluidity as a copper, or a conductive mode of being that reduces men to crippled ghouls. The more the man agrees to be copper, the more he becomes neither alive nor dead, but a third thing, an amorphous, demasculinized, half-alive physic conductor. Yet, what is so abhorrent in the notion of the third thing, let alone a fourth or a fifth? Yet what is so abhorrent in the notion of a third thing, let alone a fourth or a fifth? As Virginia Woolf once noted, the two sexes are quite inadequate, considering the vastness and variety of the world. The tradition of the Native American Burchard, transgendered individuals, generally males who live as women, is one example of a copper mode of being, indicating the possibility of movement between what Bly would have us believe are 2 fixed spheres. So, too, are the traditions of drag kings and queens, persons curiously unremarked upon in Bly's discussion of archetypical royalty. Devoted to pumping Iron John, that is, emphasizing and rejoicing in the rigidity of 2 polar genders, Bly leads us only further into narrowness, inequality, and enmity. Ooh, this is great. The next thing she references is some fucking crazy town shit. We gotta go to the next page. So she's referencing Borderlands by Gloria Anzaldúa. And, man, I don't know how to sum this up. Borderlands by Gloria... So, Anzaldúa was this, Mexican lesbian woman. And Borderlands is about a place that's between America and Mexico, like, near the border. And she kind of uses this metaphorically to talk about things that are sort of on the line of a binary, and uses a lot of really, really weird symbols and, like, weird shit in her book. So Borderlands is, like, one of these classic, like, eco-feminist, like, classical feminist, like, lesbian literature things. Sorry, that was a really, really bad summary of it, but that's what she's about to reference here. Actually, I think Borderlands might be a good one to read through for a stream like this in the future. In Borderlands, La Frontera, Gloria Anzaldúa underscores the dire need to break down the dualistic paradigm, the foundation of opposition between the white race and the colored, between males and females. The real alchemical work for both women and men is not to render ourselves into inflexible iron, but to become, in Anzaldúa's word, mestizaje, a third element, divergent, plural, holistic, mocking and rendering irrelevant the bipolar paradigm.
But didn't the same bitch say that you shouldn't use a fiction to bolster your arguments about reality? Because last time I checked, alchemy wasn't actually real.
It would be real if we would just stop being such patriarchal shitlords and let the female epistemology prevail. And then also fluid dynamics would be way ahead. It's only difficult because we just don't let women and their intrinsic nature of the way fluids work and their more fluid and valley like epistemology prevail. Instead, everything is all phallocentric. Duh.
I see the problem. I see the problem here. When they talk about fluids, what they actually mean is that you have to be drunk out of your mind to take feminism seriously. That's the core epistemological difference between them and me, because I prefer powders.
But yeah,
Anyway.
it's yeah, I'm not sure where else to go with it. But again, we have this theme though where to these feminists they believe that the entire world is constructed in these dualistic contrasting pairs, and that if you just break down all your concepts, then everything will make sense somehow. Such mockery and reversal of expectations suggests that one way out of the bonds of gender would be to develop a grounding, not in iron, but in irony. Irony is a state of affairs that is the reverse of what was, a result opposite to, and as if in mockery of the appropriate result. Perhaps, as that superb ironist Valerie Solanas once suggested, males are really feminine and females are really masculine. I love this. So far she's referenced Mary Daly, Valerie Solanas, and Andrea Dworkin. Right? I could make a separate bingo sheet of just like fucked up deranged feminists / attempted murderers and genocidal fucking weirdos. And like I would have a bingo on that sheet. Okay. Perhaps even more to the reverse of expectation and wildly contradictory to Iron Man myth is that these two categories of gender are themselves historical social constructs that shackle the full range of human expression. Masculine, feminine, are immutable facts only in the world / cage forged by those who would cast all men in the mold of Iron John. Women and men, sick of being kept in irons, might respond to the men's movement by mocking its revival of horary archetypes, profoundly unsuitable for a world in which enmity and opposition overwhelm us. In a spirit of irony, we might create a gender transcendence movement. Blythe bitterly complains about a lack of father and the need to summon Iron John as a savior for lost masculinity. Yet, in truth, our world is plagued by a gross surfeit of father power, and we suffer under the sign of Iron John. Like the Yoruban god Ogun, whom he resembles, the wild man in the woods, the father of technology, the policeman, the military, the one who feeds on war, Iron John is an archetype of antagonistic masculinity. Contrary to Bly, Iron John needs not to be summoned out of the forest, but guided back into it. He needs to be tucked in for a very long snooze at the bottom of a very deep lake. The end. So, there you have it. She thinks that this idea that there is some sort of intrinsic or natural gendered component of being male biologically, she thinks that needs to be basically taken out to the back of a shed and just fucking shot in the head.
So this is why I call them, secular creationists, because these people, they deny science. They actually are worse than creationists, because these creationists wouldn't, deny the obvious. It's like when they think, oh well, there are some exceptions, some men who are not masculine and some women who are not feminine. Yeah, well, it's called exception. That's why it's an exception, because it's rare. It's like saying, well, yeah, if you, go to, look at exceptions, there are a lot of, go to any freak show and you'll find a lot of, you'll find a bearded woman. So, or usually it was a, dude pretending to be a bearded woman. Like what's his name? This is the director who was kind of famous for directing really really bad movies, and what's his name? He directed Plan 9 from Outer Space. It's like one of the best worst movie. He was a transvestite, and he worked as a bearded woman in a circus freak show.
Wait,
But
the best worst movie wasn't that The Room?
well, it depends. It's it's his beauties in the eyes of beholder. They're very different in how bad they are. But well, you could say that the room was in some ways worse, in some ways better, because the Plan 9 from Outer Space, it was a shit show on many really, really many levels. It's like
Paris
some
in the
actors
chat
did.
says Ed Wood.
Yeah, Ed Wood. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm really derpy today for some reason. I can't remember any names. So the first name I couldn't remember. But yeah, the funny thing is that the actor who played uh, police inspector, it was, he decided to see if the director would notice if he started acting like no police officer would. Like, for example, he was holding his revolver in his hand and pointing it at people while talking and having his finger on the trigger. Something that no police officer would actually do. And director didn't even notice, and it was in the final cut of the movie. And deliberately to see if anyone would notice. Stuff like that. And given that this movie was shot on such a non-existent budget, it's actually pretty much a miracle that it actually is a movie, and it's more or less coherent, even if not exactly a masterpiece. But this guy had a passion, and you
Wait,
cannot
what's
blame
the title of this one? I think I might know what it is. It's
Plan 9 from Outer Space. It's a black and white science fiction, and it's really
Wait,
really low
did you say
budget.
Plan 9 from Outer Space?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've seen that one, but I don't remember anything about it. I remember literally nothing about it because it was so crazy.
Well, it's like aliens try to take over the world by reanimating corpses. So aliens create zombies.
Oh
It's
yeah.
it's a B movie with typical B movie plot. Oh,
One of my
typical. I mean,
favorites was it's not a proper B movie because it was actually semi well made, but Black Sheep was a horror movie about a bunch of sheep that get like some kind of like cannibal zombie virus thing and they start like eating people. So like they're literally just like running away from these murderous like hordes of sheep. That was actually a really good movie. I really like Black Sheep. Highly recommend Black Sheep.
I watched way too many horror movies when I was a kid. It's hard for me to even remember a particular one that was actually a really good one. Um, the best horror movie is not a B movie, and this is really the best horror movie of all time. It's
Scream.
called No, shut up. Um, it's called Friday the 13th Part 7: A New Blood, and it is set it was made in the 80s, and it was the peak. Like I think of this film as peak camp gay horror. And the reason I say that is like so apparently a number of the actors were gay, and you can definitely tell that there's this one black guy that kind of has a jerry curl, and you can totally tell he's gay. And then there's other ones who seem like they probably are, but like the black guy's just not good at acting like he isn't, even though he's supposed to be straight. But it's also just has this like really really over the top campiness. Like the plot of the film is that there's this girl with telekinetic abilities, so she can like move stuff with her mind, and actually some other crap. She's basically like Jean Grey verging on the Phoenix sometimes or something. And she goes to Camp Crystal Lake for no good reason. And then the last like 20 minutes of the movie is just her fighting Jason and like, throwing stuff at him and like having a cord, like hitting him over the head with a hanging lamp and it shatters on him, and then like having the cord go around his neck and hang him for a little while, and like it's pretty amazing. You should watch that, but it's not really a B movie. Kind of is a part 7 sequel of a movie that was never really that popular.
The best horror movie is Terrifier.
There's a lot of really, really good ones.
You have to see Terrifier. I think it's still for free on YouTube.
Have you seen Hellraiser?
Yeah. With
That's
good old I think I saw it on TV though, so I haven't properly seen it because I know they probably cut all like best parts out.
the original Hellraiser is terrifying.
Okay, but the reason you have to see Terrifier is because there's a scene in it where this killer clown is chasing this woman and she ducks in between like two slightly open doors and then he grabs her from outside of it, but she manages to pull away. And then she turns away and screams at him, "Get away from me, you fucking maniac!" And then he pulls out a little bite cord and starts honking it at her. It's so good. It's like the best movie ever. It's like so funny and perfect.
My memory at the moment isn't that crisp.
I watched it like 3 times the week I discovered it. It's on Netflix, but also there was a bunch of free mirrors of it on YouTube. And then after I made my video about Art the Clown, YouTube started censoring them, which I wonder if it was my fault, and I feel guilty. I don't think it was. I think it was just a coincidence. I don't know. I guess any final thoughts to wrap up this pile of hot garbage we read? I guess in her defense, I'll say she assuming that anything she said was true regarding these male mothers, I guess, good on you for pointing that out, I guess, but at the same time, you're diminishing such a greater degree of male suffering that I don't trust her or think that she's depicting it fairly. Amazing bingo of just fucked up women and genocidal people and fucking Valerie Solanas. And my alternate bingo sheet that totally would have had a bingo, unlike this one, which I was so close at.
Did she quote Valerie Solanas?
Not directly, but she referenced Valerie Solanas on the previous page in regards to irony and the suggestion that males are feminine and females are truly masculine. She has a lot of interesting word plays, right? She twisted iron into irony, and that was how she kind of concluded this one here. So she's not a bad writer.
No, she's not horrible.
Yeah, she did a lot of interesting things with like images and themes, but like what it's based on is just so fucking stupid. This idea that absent fathers don't matter and have no impact on kids, it's empirically retarded. But then it's also stupid because her explanation for why that shouldn't be an issue is that there are males in power. As if like having a male as like a distant power figure is the same as like having a real father, which is like it's just cold and weird and just goofy.
Okay.
Yeah. Those are kind of my thoughts in a nutshell on this little segment here.
I have to say I don't have anything. I'm still a little bit loopy from the massive amount of pain that I'm in, and so I had to take a bunch of kratom, and now I'm kind of like, man.
No, yeah, I know what that's like with the kratom. It's a little foggy.
Yeah.
It's a little natural kind of speedball. But the next chapter is actually promises to be very, very, very flavorful. It's called In Search of the Lunar Male: Contemporary Rituals of Men's Mysteries by Zuzanna Amis Budapest. And Susanna is spelled Zuzanna. Zuzanna Amis Budapest. And she will tell us about the lunar male and contemporary rituals of men's mysteries. So this is going to be a little bit like our good friend Starhawk, I'm anticipating. So, oozing with flavor. Oozing with flavor and mysticism.
Who's Starhawk?
Oh my god, Starhawk. Here, let me show you. If you go to starhawk.org,
Okay.
you will see the greatest banner of all time. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that the whole world can see once again the glory that is that. Window capture. Oh no, that didn't work before. We'll do display capture. We'll just capture the whole display. Boop. Okay. Bam.
Oh yeah.
Bam. She is a visionary. And you know what? This
So
background, I think, changes with the time of day. I think that
this
earlier when I looked at it, it was like a golden yellow, and now it's like darker blue. This is some very sophisticated web editing.
there's a lot of people that are like this in the Pacific Northwest. If you were to hang out with Sister Danger IRL and go to one of the things that she works at, like she does the Renaissance fairs and stuff, there'll be like people about like who are like this.
I would love. Well, yeah, because Sister Danger runs like a shop, right, where she does like fairy stuff, like fairy workshop, which is
Well,
really cool.
she doesn't own a store, but she does like own like a Etsy store, and she does birthday parties and things like that. And then she also organizes a fair. It's called the Fairy Blossom Festival every year, and goes to other festivals and works at them and everything. That's like her what
Yeah,
she
no,
does.
she's cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just love Starhawk's banner here. I
Mm.
wish that I had a banner that was this cool. I think I want to remake it. I want to remake my own banner just like this. I need to get a fancy scarf though first.
You know what this banner is missing? It should also have words "graphics design is my passion" written on it.
Well, it should be on there because I mean, just look at this. It's glorious. All right. Well, I think that we've accomplished our mission. Let's see. Ooh, I think this was almost 4 hours. They're a little bit long, so I appreciate people who are hanging out here for the whole thing because it is on the longer side of streams. I could probably do it a little bit more concisely, but I think we have fun taking our time. I do think that it was a good call to only do like one section per stream because trying to run through two of them was a little bit much. But yeah. I think we'll close it down now.
Okay.
Everybody
Yeah.
has a nice day here.
Yeah. I got some stuff to do. Kind of procrastinating. Okay. Talk to you guys later.
All right, see ya. You guys keep on keeping on.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.